Let's do the winner and then go into the open.
Sounds good.
Morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Not hear you.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
There we are.
No, I was saying I got all kind of issues this morning, so I'm hoping
Stand by.
we can get it done.
Spice Girls Wannabe 106.1 Kiss FM. Sing it.
Lava.
Yeah, we've got some tickets for the Slumber Party Girls Night Out coming up on Saturday night. Good morning. Who is this?
Hi, this is Colleen.
Hello, hello. Good morning.
Hi, this is Colleen.
Hey, Colleen, what's up?
How's it going?
It's going well. I think it's getting much better.
Yeah, would you like to go to the Girls Night Out on Saturday?
I would love to. You have really sold it.
All
So
right.
It's going to be an amazing time.
Yeah, it's going to be
Great.
super fun. You have some girlfriends you want to go with?
Absolutely.
How many would you like to take?
I would like to take 3.
All right, we'll set you up with a 4-pack of
What?
tickets. Yeah.
We wanted you to have an extra super Wednesday.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my gosh, thank you so much.
You are
Right.
welcome. All right, hold on the line just a second. All right, time is 7:25 right now.
Big news. I have some important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
K-Man's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Hey, Sandy, good morning.
Hello.
Hey, you just reminded me that I have some of those tickets I need to give away too.
All right, all
There you
right.
go.
Oh, yes. I'm going to do that today.
Hey, what do you got for us this
Fantastic.
morning?
All right. Oh, my goodness. I wish we could talk about tech issues, but anyway, they abound. But in the meantime, in local news, UK passport fees are increasing, or they have increased as of February the 2nd. So what can I say? Inflation. Everything is going to be impacted. We saw the Feds increase the interest rate yet again last week. And of course, all of the local banks have put up notices that they would be following suit shortly. And so it's just the way things are at the moment. CUC is also saying that they're now going to be taking their, remember how they did a rate deferral last year to kind of help people out when things were really pinching us a bit.
Mhm.
So they already were approved for the base rate adjustment. They did the referral, and that has now ended as of December of 2022. So they're reminding people that you might see a little bit of an increase in your upcoming bill, but if you're in the lower end of usage, you still won't see anything. So anyone who uses 1,000 kilowatts of electricity per month won't really see those, and apparently they won't see much of that. But it's $5.31 per month is what they're saying, via the facilities charge and energy charge line item. So not a whole lot, but everybody's like, every little penny right now is
it's
really
not-
counting.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not going down.
Nope.
Going
So the
up.
Humane Society, in pretty big news, has actually issued a I guess press release. They sent a letter, at any rate, to the Premier of the Cayman Islands, indicating that they are opposing this new regulations, the feral cats, the whole debacle, and they're asking for this government to repeal the legislation, the regulation. So it's kind of interesting, and I don't know if they understand what's involved in repealing something like that. I mean, the law has been put in place, I believe, since 2013, and that's the point that a lot of people seem to miss. But they're asking for it to be repealed, and so now the Premier is dragged into it. It's a whole mess. He's actually coming on the program tomorrow, if all goes well, and we're going to try to break it down from people and get him to answer all the burning questions
The
that
law
people
is what
have.
what is it specifically?
I mean, there's a lot of components to it, Blake and Aaron and your listeners. And unfortunately, a lot of people have just gotten it wrong. They have, there's a concept of groupthink. They've jumped on this bandwagon of groupthink, and they do not have the facts. Like I see people posting like, oh, I'm feeding the chickens in my yard right now, and blah, blah. That's not what this is about. And the regulations allow you to feed chickens or cats in your own yard.
Yes.
And in fact, what I would encourage people to do is, if you feel so strongly about this, like somebody's like, oh, the poor chickens are tourism attraction. I'm like, really? Go and adopt the chickens, adopt the feral cats, take them into your own yard, contain them, feed them, give them health care and all the things that they properly need, because the feral cats that live in the wild have a horrible existence. So do right by these things if you really care about this issue. But of course, people just want to talk about it, but they don't want to take any proactive action to be part of the solution.
I get that. I get that. But the Humane Society is always going to have to oppose something like that because of what they're.
Well, this is the interesting thing about it.
So that's
historically,
that's my only opinion.
Yeah, there was a lawsuit and something else that years ago had come forward.
Yes.
Then they actually mediated it. They were at an agreement. Just before this dropped, I ran into a board member of the Humane Society, and they said, listen, their position was, we're going to work with it, whatever. Now, because of public opinion, groupthink has seeped back in. But anyway,
well,
those are your headlines.
Show right now coming up on Bobo 89.1.
Thanks so much.
Put your dogs on leashes.
I know. Yeah. Have a good one, guys.
All right.
Bigger, better, bolder. The cold, hard truth is taking talk to the next level. Right here on Bobo 89.1 FM, Cayman's Community Radio. We are still spilling the tea and committed to being part of the change that Cayman so desperately needs. Join Sandy Hill weekdays from 7:30 a.m. for Premier Access, Cayman Voices, Truthful Thursdays, and much more. Cayman's #1 talk show is now bigger, better, bolder, and more than talk. Getting results with hot topics, consumer reports, court exposés, and more.
I've come to set the record straight. I've come to shine the light on you. Let me introduce myself. I am the cold, hard truth.
Now, from the CMR studio in Grand Cayman, live, direct, it's the cold, hard truth. Now, join the conversation on 345-936-2626.
That number again is
345-936-2626.
Good morning, and happy Wednesday. We do have some important guests that are going to be joining us at 8 o'clock this morning. And hopefully tomorrow, the premier will also be joining us. So make sure that you mark your calendar for that. I was just on the phone trying to work out the final details of that. Boy, this feral cat and the regulations have really, quite frankly, taken the worst. This is like in the world of PR, public relations. This is a public relations nightmare, to be quite frank. By the way, speaking of tech issues, we're having some problems. I'm going to try to explain to you guys a little bit what's going on this morning. I understand that Bobo may actually have some issues as well. They're having to restart some computer things on their side. So I'm not sure if I'm live on Bobo as yet. I may not be. There might be a slight delay to the program this morning. But one thing you have to know, folks, is when you're working with technology, you just work with it. There will be days that it's going to give you the literal middle finger and not work. And so you just go with it. And there will be other times when it's working smoothly. I mean, I must say, 95, 97% of the time, no issues. But, when you're used to just, hey, let's get it done, even that 3% can be disruptive to your day. But we're thankful. Are we not thankful? Can we get a hallelujah up in here this morning?
Praise the Lord.
In all things, we are going to give thanks, because we could not, trust me, the alternative is we might not even be here this morning. The alternative is that there'd be no live stream available at all. So Facebook has given me a bit of a warm time. Apparently, I have a backup account, which I use for the purposes of doing this show. I have another account, and I think some of you guys get confused by these two, which is Sandy Hill. And that account really is my primary account that I've had from the very beginning of my Facebook journey. And I use that to communicate with majority of people on Facebook, to just do all of the personal stuff that I do, right? So the backup account, the primary account, I don't have any issues with. But the backup account is somebody's talking about Bobo. So anyway, the backup account has lost, I wouldn't say it's lost publishing rights, but I guess so, to any Facebook pages, business pages that it controls. So I'm trying to work through that process with Facebook. Basically, they're asking me to verify my identity, which I did, obviously, sent them a driver's license and the whole 9 yards, and to also do certain things. Like they want to confirm what your location is, right? So you have to turn on location services. It's really because that Facebook account, which is a CMR page, does actually have over 75,000 followers. So I think once you've reached a certain number of followers, they consider you kind of like, I guess, a major player. I don't really know. And so as a result of that, everyone who is an administrator on the account has to have publishing rights. Now we have other administrators, and my primary account has administrator access. That's not an issue. So we can still post stuff, but the account that controls this show, right, because this is controlled by apps and stuff, that account had publishing rights suspended, I guess, after yesterday's show, because yesterday morning it was perfectly fine. So Facebook didn't give any notice at all about this issue. And now they're having me go through the ringer about identifying myself and all this stuff. That's a real pain. And it's not that it's a pain for me to do it. It's a pain that I do it. And then Facebook is like, oh, this could take weeks to resolve. I'm like, what? Weeks? Facebook, do you guys understand modern technology? Okay. That's crazy. So I've done what I needed to do, I believe. I don't know what else I need to do. And now it's just a waiting game, because unfortunately, you have no way of reaching anyone on Facebook, like a real live person. Everything is artificial intelligence and AI and all this kind of foolishness. And you can't like say, oh, I'm going to contact support at Facebook. I'm going to message them and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Even within the section where they claim, oh, you need to identify whatever. But if you have a problem, click here. When I click there to report an issue, it's not working. I try to message them and it doesn't work. So they claim that they need me to use Facebook app on my mobile phone, which I have done. Some of you saw me do that. Turn on location services, do all this stuff. So everybody messaged me about the on-air show, the radio show. It's don't come. I think Chuck is having issues of his own with the computers and stuff. So they're like, oh, update your current city and your Facebook profile. Don't use a VPN. All of those things have been done. And yet it still has me claiming that it can't verify my page publishing. It has to give me page publishing authorization. So I don't know what's going on. We found a workaround, thankfully. Listen to me. When you deal with technology, you yourself have to understand it to a certain level. So last night I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, Kevin has access to the app that we use to live stream. Not only does he have access to that, but obviously he's a page administrator and stuff as well. So I contacted support for that. And I said, hey, I'm having this Facebook issue. Will I be able to simply, log on and do this? And they said, yep, that's fine. Once Kevin starts a live stream, then it would go live on Facebook. And then from there, I'm able to control the show. So what an amazing, good thing I was thinking last night, Chow, because if I hadn't been thinking, we would have been with no Facebook access this morning, which would have really sucked, to be honest. Anyway, we patch it together, folks, and we just keep it moving. Remember, our motto for 2023 is an object in motion stays in motion. So we're going to just keep on trucking along. Some confirm that we're now on radio. Thank you so much, Chuck. These things do happen. Like I said, technology is not perfect. And, it definitely is what it is. So we're grateful. Yeah, we're grateful for all of the options that we do have available to us. And, what can I say except praise the Lord and let's keep it moving. That's how I see it. So we do have guests coming on this morning. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the feral cat situation again. It's so unfortunate that this has really blown up in the way in which it has. And I think this is a perfect example. And I hope that it's probably a bit of a tough lesson for the powers that be to learn, in the sense that the political arm needs to understand quite clearly what the civil servants, what their mandate should be from an educational perspective, rolling out new laws and so forth. You've got to give people time to be able to digest what's coming down the pipeline. It's as simple as that, really. It's somebody says Facebook, they just want you to jump through hoops backwards. That's what they're all about, honey child. So anyway, so let's see. Yeah, so it is what it is. But I think that I'm hoping that the tough lessons, because I imagine this has been an unbelievably aggravating situation. I'm hoping that the lessons are like somebody in the civil service is taking notes about how not to implement regulations that are going to be somewhat controversial. Like, did they not see this coming? But it's an incredible amount of misinformation that's out in the community about this. There are people out there who are talking about, oh, I'm feeding the cats in my yard, and if they come and find me, I'm like, there's a specific exemption for you feeding cats or chickens in your yard. That is not what this law is trying to do. Why do y'all keep saying that? Why? Because you're not reading. You're emotive about the situation. You're not educating yourself. So y'all are just stuck. It's like a group think mentality. We are herds right now, all going in a singular direction, not even understand that, we're going to the slaughterhouse. I was saying to someone last night, someone actually had the audacity, and I mean, it's funny in a way, but then it certainly demonstrates how we have, quite frankly, lost the plot, right? Someone actually said, and to me, oh my God, I have to scratch my head on a regular basis when I hear this level of stupidity. And then y'all be liking the post and, like, oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Mm-hmm. Someone, listen, I couldn't make this stuff up. Hold on, let me get y'all the screenshot of this. I could not make this stuff up if I tried. This is how ridiculous people are. So someone has now started a petition. Oh, let's start a petition about this law. Of course, the Humane Society, now feeling the pressure, they have jumped up, although they had previously agreed to a mediation and a stand down with some other organization. And I've spoken to people on their board, and they said, listen, we're not happy about it, but we also understand that in life, sometimes you have to choose a situation that is not an ideal situation because you have no other choice, right? It's not like there's other viable options that are going to work for protecting our native and endangered bird species. So when I see someone saying, hold on, let me try and find this for you guys. Where did I just put it? Oh, yes. Here we go. When I see someone saying something like this on the petition, right? About how, admit it or not, chickens are one of our tourist attractions. Wow. And then 3 people actually love that comment. So at least 4 people in this country are actually believing and thinking that chickens are one of our tourist attractions. Are y'all kidding me? I mean, is that a serious comment? And do you people out there really think this way? Help me to understand this, because I am at a loss for words. Quite frankly, I am dumbfounded by how that could even be possible. You actually think that the tourists who are coming to this jurisdiction enjoy seeing these chickens all over the place, picking at things, defecating. I don't purposely run chickens over. In fact, I'm one of those people who stop to make them cross the street with their babies, but they are a proverbial nuisance. And y'all talk about a tourist attraction? My God, what a hot mess we're in. If the only a tourist attraction for us are chickens, we better try and talk to DOT, because the millions of dollars that they are spending is clearly being wasted when you have people talking foolishness about the chickens are a tourist attraction. What? I couldn't believe my little eyes, you know. I was like, maybe I got on the wrong pair of glasses today. Let me switch up my glasses. When did chickens become a tourist attraction? They are a proverbial nuisance. And when I say nuisance, I really mean it. They might look at them and go, oh, like where I come from in LA, I don't see tourists, or wherever they're coming from, the States, depending. I mean, I don't see chickens everywhere. So they might be like, oh yeah, okay, this is a little bit different. They're not no damn tourist attraction. And we are trying to attract high-end tourists, and y'all think that they want to see these feral chickens all over the place? No, man. I am just like, wow. I can't believe my ears. Something's wrong. Something is wrong with the narrative. And the government, unfortunately, didn't get ahead of the narrative in any sort of efficient time to try to make it an accurate narrative even. Not about trying to control the narrative, but you make it accurate. And that simply has not been done. It is absolutely shocking. So they're not a tourist attraction, honey child. I don't know. The person who said that, are they Caymanian? Miriam Rodriguez? I think I know which Miriam that is. That's the Miriam from Honduras. But I mean, we should be embarrassed. We should really be embarrassed. I mean, honest to God, we got to do better than this. And then a lot of you have come up with these pie in the sky ideas about what could be done with them. Oh, we need a farm. We need this. We need that. Is Damien with us this morning? I know Damien is always here. Damien, I saw your comment about having the female prison, have a chicken farm and this, that, and the next thing. And in your mind, that might sound like a really good idea. And what I would encourage you to do, Damien, is sit down and come up with a business plan of how this would work. So, I've told you guys before, it's really important that when you have an idea, you put pen to paper, which putting the very process of putting pen to paper really forces you to think about the nitty-gritty of what your idea is. Because there's a lot of ideas that on the face of it sound brilliant. Trust me. We all believe that we're little Einsteins walking around the place and no one, sorry. Oh my gosh. I don't have any tea this morning because when it rains, it pours. That's all I can tell you. But I'll soon get it sorted out. Yeah, so Mm, okay, I'm gonna have to get a throat lozenge, I believe. Um, oh my goodness, right? Put pen to paper because every idea sounds brilliant until you start to go through the details and work out the nitty gritty. A chicken farm sounds good, does it not? It sounds easy, it sounds doable. I believe somebody tried doing one before. And because of the number of um, the amount of feces that they produce that was then seeping into waters, the water table, and all sorts of stuff. The people who had this as a farming idea found it very, very difficult to maintain, and it has since been shut down because DOE will have regulations in place. If you have a chicken coop, right? Even if it's a farm all the way out in East End, you have to be maintaining it to appropriate standard. And also for the health of your chickens. Because remember, I told you guys before, these little critters are, they're the equivalent, Seventh-day Adventists don't believe in eating shellfish because they say they are bottom feeders, right? Lobster, shrimp, and all that kind of stuff. They're scavengers, right? The land version of a scavenger is a chicken. They will eat anything and anybody. They eat each other, decomposed. So I know we all eat chicken, but I'm just telling y'all how it is. They eat anything, including their own feces if they're hungry enough. Okay? So you would have to have some real mechanisms in place to have a proper chicken farm, right? So your idea is that, make the prison do it. Low end, low risk prisoners. Well, honey child, need I remind you that the last time we had a low risk prisoner farm situation, the prison used to have a farm. And I'm not saying they weren't growing stuff that was helping to, I guess, keep them busy out in the hot sun and, give them maybe some provisions. But guess what? That led to the murder of a young lady by the name of Sabrina Shern. And to this day, her family does not understand how the prison could have a farm and have such slack protocols in place that their daughter was able to access the farm, and one of the prisoners allegedly, he was convicted anyway, right, of killing her on said farm. And you say, low risk prisoners. Well, he was a low risk prisoner who was due to come out in a couple months. I want y'all to think about the things that you say in the context of what has been done and what has worked in the past and what has not worked. Now, I challenge all of you, right, who have an idea about how easy this is, to take just 10 chickens of your own, put them in your backyard, and set up a little miniature farm, and then give us a report of how that's working out for you. I think for some of you, you actually would be able to do it. You can get the eggs. You can have some chicken. You complain about the price of everything at the grocery store. So now you can start slaughtering and cooking and defeathering your own chickens. Just do it. We're always looking for somebody else to be the problem solver, right? Government has come up with a solution. You all don't like it. So the solution now is to put it on government to do something else. Government should set up the farm. Why don't you do it? What's stopping you, the people, from being more proactive? Even with the feral cats, you guys love cats so much. These feral cats are so sweet, Miss Sandy, and they're not bothering nobody. Take one of them into your house or into your yard. Put them in a cage or whatever. Give them proper health care, because a lot of them are carrying diseases and they're sick and they die horrible deaths out in the wild, right? All sorts of things happen to them. Their living condition is some of the worst. So take them in. Be the change that you want to see. And I know a lot of you adopt pets from the Humane Society. You adopt cats. Ask the Humane Society, when they're full of capacity and they have to start putting dogs and animals down, what would they be doing with the feral cats? Hear me, dogs and animals, dogs and cats. What were they doing with feral cats at that time? So the solution is just to leave them out in Mother Nature and have them destroy our indigenous species. But you know what I said to DOE? I'm going to blame them for this. Because how many of you even know anything, right, about the native iguana, the native blue iguana? How many of you know anything about booby birds and all these other indigenous species that are on the verge of extinction and that we are trying to save? Y'all know more about stupid chickens, or you think, and feral cats than you know about the booby bird. And to me, that is a problem. That is why you have such an affinity for feral cats and don't even care about the booby birds. And you know nothing about the habitation of the birds and how and why they're endangered, despite the fact that DOE says that they have decades worth of research. You guys are out there spewing misinformation that counters the research that they have. But I blame them for that. I blame DOE, because why is it that the people don't know anything about these endangered species? And if you have decades worth of research, why are we now just hearing about it in 2023? You knew these regulations were coming. The law was passed when, 2013? Y'all knew the regulations were coming. In fact, they knew it so well that the Humane Society and what was the name of that other animal charity had sued the previous government over this very same issue. So you mean to tell me that nobody in this current government saw this coming? When you already had been sued, it was already so controversial, you didn't see that these regulations would be very, very controversial, regardless of how you cut it. Even if it was 1 day in prison, people would be up in arms, much less the potential of a $500,000 fine and 4 years in prison, which is, again, for the most egregious offenses under the entire legislation, not talking about feral cats and chickens. There should have been a year-long educational campaign. Every single child in this country should be having, through their school programs, access to environmental lessons, knowing what is indigenous to the Cayman Islands and what is not. Feral chickens not indigenous to the Cayman Islands, I hate to tell you the truth. Right? These booby birds been here for how long? And they're on the verge of extinctions because of feral cats. People brought cats here. I mean, there are days that I cannot, for no amount of money in the world or anything else, I can't take this stupidity that I see that I'm surrounded by. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, morning, Sunday. It's true what you're saying about the stupidity that was going on in the island.
Because it's a matter of educating our people, and the people have not been educated. And for lack of knowledge, we will perish.
Yeah, let me give a little insight on my view about it. A lot of people are upset. I understand. We need to work together as a Cayman Islands because they're not working together as people no more.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is about it, when I was in school, I learned it from when I was in year 3, social studies and all those things. When we have to go Cayman Brock for school field trips and all those things, we have to learn about the caves, geography and all those stuff. Booby birds are a very important thing because they're local animals. They're local. They're they're indigenous. And the thing is about it, they're protecting all of these coastal lines and the rocks that they nest on and whatnot, because they're not stupid birds. But when animals interfere, like the feral cats, like what they're saying, they think that it's only the feral cats that is the problem, but it's not. That's just one of the problems. And the chickens also, the snakes also, the iguanas also, and also the big problem is the humans, because the humans understand and the animals don't. And when the humans are doing something, who are they going to blame? The animals. So what I understand is these birds are migratory birds as well. They have the blue-footed boobies that have like the biggest migration other than the albatrosses and things like this. Now, is there only booby birds in Cayman Brock? Because one thing, I haven't seen a booby bird in Grand Cayman. And I don't know if they have them in Grand Cayman, but if they are, they're on the key off of South Sound or something like this that we don't see, or on the Fishing Rock in North Sound. I'm not sure. But in my concern, I just want to just saying that the inner-land people that don't have no concern about these chicken feedings and all these things. They're just getting involved in something they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's mainly the coastal areas that these birds are forming their nests and stuff like this. So if they're gonna keep developing on land that these birds required to nest in, who else they're gonna blame it on?
Mm-hmm. Listen,
Think about it like that, because I
yeah.
still don't even believe it's a real animal problem, to be honest. I just think that the animal is a part of the problem.
Well, I mean, if they're a big part of the problem, then there has to be, an addressing of that. No one's saying that they're the only problem, though.
But like they say in the Cayman Rock, there's people that are eating booby eggs.
Which people?
I don't know, but you ask the Cayman Brockers. I don't live in Cayman Brock. Like I said, I don't see no booby birds in Cayman. All I see is frigate birds. We have frigate birds and the small little seagulls that we got that have the little orange mouth. But I don't know anything else
listen to me, Alejandro. DOE says that they have decades of research that they've relied upon on drafting of these regulations. My point is this. Why is it that the people of the Cayman Islands do not know what the decades of research has said? This is what I'm saying. They say they have unrefutable evidence that the biggest problem with these birds, with the
first of all, they don't teach the children this in school anymore.
Not just that, but the community at large. We need to know. We need to understand. There has to be an educational process here.
Exactly, and Sandy, just like the same way how they would teach children in school, I think that they should sit down and teach the people as well, the community.
Absolutely, because that's exactly what I'm saying.
Honestly, you see them sitting down, they're talking about the new road. I'm gonna speak a little bit because I listened a little bit about the new road and think about improvement with whatever in the future, and I understand Cayman need to develop. But when they start developing this road, my opinion is that the day that they open up this new road, everybody's going to jam pack inside that new road. I'm not going to be like thinking negative, but it has been done in Cayman already. So many times when they build new roads, it's going to be the biggest traffic for like a few weeks. And then everybody's going to realize it would better to just stay in the old road. Because I don't see the reason why they're going to have to be hustling, bustling on this new road. And then the next thing, when they see that the new road is built.
Alejandro, I mean, we're going to be talking with them here in a minute. I think we're waiting on DOE. Yeah. I see NRA is getting prepared. But of course, let me ask you a question. How has the Esterly Tibbetts Highway in West Bay, thanks to the DART organization, how has that road made a difference in the quality of life for the people in West Bay?
I'm not saying it now, because I don't live in West Bay no more for the last 2 years. But West Bay, I've noticed that road has.
Do you remember? Really nice. Let me ask you a question though. Do you remember life in West Bay before that road was available?
It was really beautiful, I can tell you that.
No. Do you remember driving in the morning, having to get to work, or were you too young to remember that? Because the road had been there for a little while now.
2010, I had my license. I can remember driving in West Bay Road. Maybe 1 hour of the day or 2 hours of the day in traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
You know how that impacts the quality of your life?
Well, we still do that today, but just one little small portion.
I'm talking about coming from West Bay. People can leave West Bay at 8:10 in the morning and be to town at 8:15 to work and sitting at their desk with their first cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That is quality of life. Do you think that I want to waste my entire life sitting in traffic every single morning and then another hour and a half, and heaven forbid there's an accident, emergency vehicles only have one route, they can't get through? I mean, come on.
Yeah, no one
I got more important things to do. I literally in the evenings when I have to pick up my daughter from school, I'd be falling asleep at the wheel because I'm like, oh my God, I'm so bored to death.
I'm just waiting for the new development after they build that road, but it's all right. If it's good for the east, if it's good for the eastern districts, I mean, well,
it's not just about new development. There's existing development that is there that again bottlenecks with this traffic situation. So the new road, like most things, is not a singular solution, but it is one of the things that's being proposed. Anyway, the experts are ready, so we're going to have them come onto the program. Thank you very much for your comments. Really appreciate it. So I think, folks, that there has to be, like I said, and education. So I've gotten confirmation that the brown boobies they only nest in the brack on cliffs and rocky shores. Red-footed boobies only in Little Cayman, and they nest in the wetland trees. And some of the frigates and man-of-war, except those that we see all over, they only nest in Little Cayman. So again, these are not migratory birds. These are, well, I guess, I don't know if they're migratory in the sense that they just come there and lay their eggs, or if they remain there, whatever. I mean, birds obviously fly, so they can fly pretty much anywhere that they want to. But, you know, the nesting is what keeps the population alive and well. And we're talking about the fact that these species are only found in these locations. And once they are gone, then they are gone, and that's it. There's no bringing them back from extinction. So I'm sorry, as much as I love the cuteness of a cat, I'm not going to sit down here. And people said that I just got confirmation, they're not migratory. This is what I'm saying. DOE has failed at educating the people about the various endangered species, endemic species, all this stuff to the Cayman Islands. Because I myself don't even know. I'm asking them, are they migratory? They're like, nope, they only nest here. Okay, they're not found anywhere else in the world? Nope. Everybody in Cayman should know. We should know how to identify them. This should have been a lifelong thing. I mean, I didn't really go to primary school here. I left in the 4th grade, right? But in schools, are kids being taught this, or adults being exposed to this and taught this information? There has to be campaigns around educating your community on an ongoing and regular basis about these types of things. Because it's no wonder now some people, and again, I don't think it's a majority of the people, a lot of you are like on the down low. Like maybe you don't want your granny to hear you say it, or your neighbor next door because she's the cat lady with 50 cats. But on the down low, you're like, these feral cats are a problem. But DOE doesn't care about the cats in your house or in your yard, or the chickens in your yard. In fact, let me tell y'all how ridiculous this whole situation is. We have neighborhood feral cats that I would love to get rid of. I reached out to DOE and they're like, nope, that's not what we do. We're not in the business of exterminating cats. I'm like, well, not cats, sorry, the chickens. And I'm like, well, why not? I mean, I need some help here. Oh no, reach out to the Department of Environment. I reached out to the Department of Environment. They don't do it either. So there's not even anybody to do anything about the feral chickens that we're talking about. I'm like, what? Why is there an uproar then? When nobody even has a plan of eradication for the chickens. Why are y'all worried about it? You know what DOA said to me? Oh, we don't do it, but we'll sell you a trap, a chicken coop trap, and you can do it yourself. I was like, really? Uh-huh. There are private organizations, and I'm not gonna name any this morning, to keep their business places chicken free. They will have people who come out and call the chickens on their behalf. And you don't notice it, but that's why you can go and enjoy certain outdoor spaces without being attacked and bothered by these chickens. So now I have a number of a gentleman. I'm going to have him come and call the whole area of chickens in my neighborhood. You all love the chickens and you want a chicken, let me know. I'll have him deliver it to your house so you can start your own chicken farm for free. I'll do that for free. So you just message me, send me your name, number, and address, and I'll have him drop off the chicken for you. I don't want them in my yard. And quite frankly, I don't want them in my neighborhood either. But I'm open to a compromise. Those of you who want to do the farming, by all means, let's get it on. Anyway, we'll have more opportunities, folks, to talk about the chickens and the cats. You know, I think the issue, because somebody else said, why are y'all not up in arms about the culling of lionfish and another invasive species? Why are you not up in arms about the culling of the green iguanas? You know, and I think really it has to do with, it's a mindset that, oh, these cats are all fuzzy and they're cute and blah, blah, blah. You know, I saw somebody commented in one of the posts when we put up the story, Renee used a stock photo of a cat killing a bird in its mouth. And they're like, oh, why do you keep using this picture? This picture is so old. And, you know, why didn't you show a nice, pretty cat? You see, that's the very mind control elements that I'm talking about. These feral cats are not out there in the wild living a fantasy life. They're not part of the Disney organization, right? Where they're all happy and they have little Disney parties at night and they have little dance parties for kitty cat associations and they're living their best life and they're going to live to be, 15, 20 years old like your house cat. They're living a miserable existence, overpopulating, right? Running rampant. They have a very, very low age expectancy, filled with disease and other things. They get injured in the wild. There's nobody to take care of them. That is the reality of the life of these cats. So even if you really love cats, who wants these cats to be living in that sort of condition? Sometimes the humane thing to do is actually put them down for their own good as well. So it's just so incredibly surprising to me, but not really, because, we think of them as warm and fuzzy. When you think about a cat, you're thinking about the cat that lives in your house with you, that you have an affinity towards, that you love, and you think the cat loves you. And you don't understand their predatory instincts and their behavior, which is ingrained in them. They're not bred in the same way, as we've said before, that dogs are. And you can't control a cat quite in the same way. Even PETA, by the way, and like I said, we'll get into this discussion a bit more. PETA, you know them, big time organization against the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, even to them, have published just as of February of 2021, updated in November of 2022, an article about the TNR, Trap, Neuter, and Release program. Right? So when you all get upset about, oh, Sandy, you guys shouldn't show that image of that poor little cat. Why didn't you show a nice cat, a nice looking cat? Because that is not the reality of these species. Y'all want to control the narrative and make things look pretty when that's not the reality. And here in this program, we're about the real deal here. So I'm going to show you this picture because this is what feral cats are having to live with. They're not getting any baths. They're full of mites and ticks and whatever other parasites out there. One final caller before we switch over to the NRA guest. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, morning, Sunday.
Morning. How are you?
I just got not too bad. I just got a quick comment about what you're discussing there.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that would help the situation with these chicken and this cat is for the government to have regular garbage pickup because nobody don't need to feed the chickens. Nah. If the garbage is there, they're gonna go inside the garbage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because some of these government buildings the garbage isn't being picked up regularly on a regular basis. And some neighborhoods and stuff, the pickup is only once a week now.
Yeah.
Or been there for the last couple of years. Anyhow, it's been that way. So I don't know why they don't put it back to regular pickup at least twice a week to keep the garbage down, because the chicken will go in it, and or soon the cats will start to go in it too. So that's that. That's a big help out to do. When they implement one law, they got to realize that they could implement another one to help it out too, because nobody not gonna feed them.
Yes, sir.
If the garbage is there, nobody don't have to feed them.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay then.
All right, honey. Thank you so much. Absolutely. I mean, listen, if somebody knows who to fend for themselves, it's definitely chickens. They don't need you to feed them. Here's another feral cat. We'll use this one as the next picture that we put up. And here's another one. Lost an eye. Another eye looks like it's infected. And look at this little gray cat. This is all on the PETA website, by the way, talking about this catch and release. Look at him, tail gone. Y'all want the real deal? You want reality? Okay, we'll give it to you. This concept of, oh no, use a nice, pretty cat because I don't want to think about reality. Y'all need to stop it. Y'all really need to stop it. Anyway, somebody's sending me some information here about all the different diseases and stuff that the cats get. Says, please share. Don't worry. That will be tomorrow's program. We need to get to the NRA this morning. Folks, This East-West Arterial is another big issue, another controversial issue. You know, at some point, it's been on the table, I think, for must be 20 years now. So there's some issues that, quite honestly, even me get sick and tired of talking about. I'm like, can we just get it done already? I mean, honest to God, right? Does it take 20 and 30 years to make a decision in this country and to go from point A to point B? And in the meantime, all of the issues, right? Traffic and congestion and everything else, the quality of life issues continue to mount and continue to frustrate people to no end. So the ball has started to roll, and we want to ensure that you, the people, are well educated on what is going on every single step of the way. The National Roads Authority is leading it to some extent. They brought in experts, right? The Department of Environment has their role to play. We have Ms. Gina Petrie, Ebanks Petrie, who's going to be joining us as part of the contingency this morning as well. You all have to ensure that you understand what the environmental impact assessment, EIA, terms of reference are, what that even means, right? Why are they bringing in independent consultants? What will those independent consultants be looking at? So some of you have already made up your mind about this project one way or the other. You shouldn't have. You should be waiting on accurate, non-biased information for you to then make an informed decision after you have that information. But as I've always said on this program, everybody is an expert. We all suffer from the Dunning-Kruger syndrome, where we all think we know everything about everything. We're shipping experts. We're road experts. We're going to tell the NRA how to build a road and how to fix a pothole because we're the ones who've been doing it for 50 years and we're the experts. I caution you. You can call yourself an environmentalist. I don't really care what you want to call yourself. That's fine. I'm here for the environment. I'm pro-environment, and I think there has to be a balance that is always struck. What will the balance be? We'll find out. But reserve your thoughts and getting on your soapbox and taking a position when you yourself have not been properly educated on what this process will be. That's all I'm asking this morning, is to listen to our guests with an open mind. Come with your questions, right? And the questions really should be about trying to understand what it is that is going to happen and what the proposals are in relation to this expansion. All right, let's go ahead and bring in our guests this morning. Big shout out to the National Roads Authority team. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, let's go ahead and identify everyone who is there. I see you guys have a room. We can't see you too closely, but you've got a room camera set up. Now, are we missing Mr. Edward? Is he not in there?
He will be joining us shortly.
All right, so let's go ahead around the table then and just introduce yourselves, name and position in terms of who you are.
Okay, I'm Denis Thibault, the Assistant Director of Transportation and Planning at the NRA.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm Mary Pandui, a transportation planner at the National Roads Authority.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm Joyce Barkley. I'm the project manager for Whitman, Reckert and Associates.
Okay, wonderful.
And I'm Lindsay Ulizio, Senior Project Engineer for Whitman, Reckert and Associates as well.
Okay, so before we bring Ms. Gina in, we'll call you WRA for short, which is the name of your company. Ladies, we've got Miss Lindsay and Miss Joyce. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and what it is that you do so that we can understand why you've been brought in as independent consultants? Who are you?
Well, WRA is a engineering consulting firm in the United States. We've been in business since the 1900s, 1915, I think was when we were incorporated, out of the Baltimore, Maryland office. And we're not just a engineering design firm. We also do, wastewater, landscape architecture, and we actually have a very large environmental component to the company. A lot of engineering firms out there actually use their environmental firm as more just like a support service for their design, but we're actually a full service environmental firm as well. We came down to work with Denis and the NRA folks because we can provide not only the environmental services, but once we find a preferred alternative or a reasonable alternative, we do have the in-house capabilities to actually take it to at least a preliminary design level.
And I
All
will
right.
chime in with Joyce as well that we also house a very large transportation group as well. So from my standpoint, I'm a traffic and transportation engineer. So we also have the capabilities and the capacity to use evaluation tool sets to evaluate appropriate measures for traffic and travel conditions.
All right. So it sounds like you're well positioned to assist with this project.
Yes.
I've seen, based on your website, that you guys have done some, what I would consider major projects. There's one up now for the Rochester roundabout, which is a massive roundabout project there in Rochester. That's New York, right? So you have, a team of individuals. You've got over 100 years of experience. So you've got that legacy behind you. You've got a number of projects, smaller scale, larger scale, medium scale that you've worked on. Folks, if you're interested in knowing more about these individuals, you can certainly go have a look. So the Rochester Roundabout, part of a statewide effort to link transportation and the surrounding community. So go and check that for the Pittsburgh region. They've got pictures up. They give you an aerial view of the roundabout. They tell you all about, what they do. They've got project highlights for that specific one. I like that you have an environmental element to what it is that you do. So you guys are not just engineers that are focused on the building of structures and roads and so on, with no other concern, especially when it comes to the environment. So tell us a little bit, if we can focus on this area of your expertise, what do you bring to the table under the heading of environmental?
Well, as part of our projects for the company, roughly 60% of our work is transportation. And in the United States, every transportation transportation project that's federally funded, we also have to look at the environmental aspect underneath the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. And that requires us to look at all environmental impacts, all social impacts, all human impacts. So not just environmental. So all of the folks on our team are well versed in doing this NEPA evaluation, which is analogous to the EIA process here in the islands.
All right. So you've done that before, and you bring that level of experience to the platform here.
Yes.
All
I personally have had over 27 years of experience conducting NEPA evaluations. And I'm not the only person within our environmental team that does that. Some of our senior VPs and senior scientists have also had over 20 years of experience individually. So we bring several hundred years worth of NEPA experience to this project.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about exactly what the environmental impact assessment will entail. And, we understand, obviously, you guys have been brought on because of your level of expertise and your past experience. So what specific now to the Cayman Islands can the people expect from this process?
Well, we have of course, we're following the EIA directive that was established 2016. We've been working closely with Gina, her staff, and other members of the EAB board. So we have looked at a certain number, or at least we're going to be addressing a certain number of affected resources that were based on the scope and opinion, such as greenhouse gases, the mangroves, socioeconomic, cultural, natural heritage resources, among some other resources. What we want to know, because we are now in the draft terms of reference stage, What we need to know is what is the public's concern? What do they want to see addressed in the terms? You know, the terms is this guiding document for our team to know which standards are we going to be applying, what methodology are we going to be using, and that's a, you know, collaboration between us and the AB to make sure that we do have those right standards. But if there are issues within the islands themselves that we need to be addressing that are not currently in the terms, we need to know that.
All right, very good. Let's speak a little bit then to our NRA representative, Miss Marion. So obviously the NRA has put out, they talked about, you know, sticking within the terms of reference for the scope of the project. Tell us a little bit about, you know, when the NRA, and this has been a very long haul project in terms of even just getting to this point, but when the NRA started to consider, okay, we need a East-West Arterial expansion, what are some of the elements then that are in the RFP, sorry, that you put out there for bid, and why really did you guys choose this particular company for their level of expertise?
Well, I'll be speaking about that.
Okay.
So initially the corridor was planned under a long-term road corridor back in 2005. Now the National Conservation Act did not come into effect quite a few years after that, but in 2016 there were directives for EIAs, where they should be applied. There's been several efforts over time, until 2021 when government said we're going to proceed with that. We had to prepare a tender document where EAB was involved in, you know, we used a scoping opinion that was provided to the NRA from the EAB, and then so it took us a little bit of time to sort that out and put a tender document out in March 2022. It was open tender, so there were several groups that bid it, and the WIA was the technical capability of the firm and the players that they were bringing. They were vetted by the EAB, and then the NIA, the evaluation group, you know, we assessed, and they were the successful winner on that. And then we had to go to the public tender committee, present, you know, our bid, the bid, whether we had followed our process, if we had followed the process for the procurement, and they endorsed our recommendation. But then WIA was engaged in signing contract, and then to develop the terms of reference. So this is all, it's a learning process for us. This is the first transportation project subject to a EIA for government. So.
Okay, very good. Now you talk about, you know, having gotten in 2021 to the point of sort of putting that request out there, but take us back in time a little bit, Mr. Tibbetts, and talk about how long this West-East Arterial has been on the plans for the NRA, the ministry, for, you know, previous governments. How long are we talking about here?
Well, formally, I mean, there's as I said earlier, there was a section 26, a long-term road corridor that was passed in May 2005. So we're talking almost 18 years now. Prior to that, I know there was a master ground transportation study. It did not go as far as that. That's a study that I think that was published by government back in 1987, 1988. Obviously, government did not endorse at the time. I think it was perceived as being too expensive. It was a substantial amount of money, but there was a lot of roads. So the idea was not, I don't think at the time, to build everything in 1 year. That it could have been built over 10 years, you know. So this is a new effort, you know. Everybody's been complaining about traffic condition, and it's getting worse. So we've taken the approach, you know, since 2005, government there was an initial attempt in 2008 to perhaps proceed with building the road, and then the world economy took a downturn. Studies have been started by then, but then by 2009, it was not going to be sustainable to proceed. So at the time, the government indicated that they were going to stop the project. So we're talking about 13 years ago now. So this is another effort. So this is as far as we made it. We can look at all the different factors, take that in consideration, then present the result or the alternatives to do nothing and all that to the public. We recognize it's not going to please everybody, but at the end of the day, it's going to be, hopefully everything will be on the table, and then we recognize this is going to generate a substantial amount of discussion, public discourse on that, and that's okay. That's part of it. Yeah, because we have one shot at it. So if the project is to proceed, we have one shot at it. So the NIS wants it to be done the right way. We take into account the environment, but the impacts it has on the life of existing communities along there is not just we build a road.
Right.
It's about quality of life, for those people that are living in the Eastern District. I live in Beach Bay. It took me an hour and 10 minutes to get to work this morning. Going to be here by 8 o'clock. So it took me an hour and 10 minutes. Don't know why, but that's what it did.
Yeah.
So I can imagine the folks from north side and east end. That means they were on the road maybe an hour before me. It was just bumpy.
So let's talk a little bit.
Yep.
Yes. Marion, do we have any information that's been collected over the years about that very same issue? To me, it's a quality of life issue. What are some of the frustrations that people are having? And what sort of population growth have we had over the past 10 years from the Eastern districts?
Well, I can partially answer that.
Okay.
Well, the Eastern districts have now grown as big as, say, Barrington or the growth rate in the last 10 years is as high as Barrington. So we'll look with the latest census, we will look down at the not just district, but the little pockets of population growth where it has been happening. And it'd be surprising to see this population growth and also the amount of development that has been approved over the last 10 years. Yeah. So we recognize that some developments are for foreign owners, but also local population also is moving. In the last, what was it in the newspaper that said the census was released, and then we may have had another 8,000 people in a year in terms of growth, I guess, as the economy is picking up. That has to have an impact on onto the traffic and the infrastructure. It's not the one solution will solve everything. It's going to be a multitude of different things. It's more than one aspect to this.
Absolutely. So, there are people, I see a comment here, and I guess we might as well address these comments head on. We'll bring Ms. Gina Ebanks-Petrie here in just a second from the Department of Environment. But we have Canyon Problems who's saying another DART project, another DART company, ? So the consultants who are in the studio, I guess he's referring to you guys. I'm not really sure, he or she, whoever Canyon Problems are. Can you clarify if you have any connections to the DART organization? Are you owned by the DART organization? Do you know anything about them even?
Not very familiar with the DART company, but we are privately owned, have nothing to do with DART or any other company on this island.
Okay. All right. So Canyon Problems, that should answer your question. Let's say good morning to Ms. Gina Ebanks-Petrie, who's the director for the Department of Environment. Good morning, Ms. Gina. How are you?
Good morning, Sandy. I'm not sure why I'm not showing up in my mangrove picture is, but that's fine.
I don't know if you put that up as your profile picture at some point.
Well, I don't know. I'm
yes,
really
but it's a beautiful picture to be able to look at.
Zoom, so it seems to have come over.
Yes. Well, it's not a bad picture, I must say. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning as well. I mean, obviously, we want to have you here because there might be some questions, in fact, that are, geared towards you and in your organization, your position as director. And I know that you've made it very clear in terms of what your scope will be in this discussion. So again, it's just about the EIA process from the perspective of the Department of Environment. So let's hear just your general thoughts on how the Department of Environment will be involved in the environmental impact assessment process and the terms of reference.
Thanks, Sandy. So the National Conservation Act, as I think everybody is aware, was passed in 2013. It had provision for commencement of various parts of the law at separate times. So Part 7 of the law, which mandates that all government entities consult with the council before they take any decisions that could impact the environment, came into effect in 2016. And shortly after that, we published the EIA directive, which is basically the rules that govern environmental impact assessments in the Cayman Islands. Until that time, there had been no legislation governing environmental impact assessments in Cayman. So that's the directive that Denis was referring to earlier. That directive essentially has three phases to it. Initially, what the law says is that if the council believes that it is being asked to provide its input on a project for which it needs more information, it can require an environmental impact assessment to be carried out. And on the basis of that the results of that environmental impact assessment, the council will then put its views to whichever government entity has originated the project, as well as cabinet and other decision makers. So that's the legal basis for the EIA. Once we get into the EIA, the first stage is for the Department of Environment, on behalf of the council, to screen the project to determine whether or not it needs an EIA. The screening process is triggered by a list of certain types of projects, as well as the location and the potential magnitude of impacts that a project might have. So we screened the project and decided that it did need an EIA. We didn't feel we had sufficient information on the effects of essentially constructing a roadway that could serve as a dam for stormwater and rainwater runoff that typically goes south to north into the Central Mangrove Wetland. We are very concerned about the communities to the south of the road being flooded if the road wasn't constructed properly. Of course, there are also serious concerns about the environmental impact of the road traversing the southern boundary of the Central Mangrove Wetland, which is the largest area of mangrove that we have left on our island. It's an intact system. It's a functional unit, and we were concerned about the impacts on the resources within the Central Mangrove Wetland and around the Central Mangrove Wetland, including, for example, the Meagle Bay Pond Protected Area, which, as you know, is just on the southern border of the Central Mangrove Wetland. So we then provided a scoping opinion. I think we provided a couple of scoping opinions between 2016 and 2022 to the NRA to say that these are the major impacts that are what we judge to be significant impacts, and we think that these need to be addressed in the EIA. Please assemble a team of experts who can address these issues, and then let us have their CVs, etc., and we will look at the team and confirm that we believe that there is sufficient depth and breadth to the expertise in the team being put forward to address the EIA. And Denis, I think, alluded to that earlier, that we assisted them with screening the not just WRA, there were other consultants who were bidding, obviously, and we helped them to narrow down the choice for the EIA consultants. So that's our involvement. We will be basically responsible for managing the EIA process, starting with ensuring that the terms of reference properly reflect the issues that we raised in the scoping opinion, but also through this public consultation that's happening right now, that the terms of reference reflect the concerns of the Caymanian community about the road, both from an environmental perspective, from a traffic management perspective, from a socioeconomic perspective. So we will be involved in updating the terms of reference with the consultants once the public consultation has been finished. Assuming that the public have made some interventions that need to be included in the EIA terms of reference.
Right. Okay, very good. And just to let our listeners know, there is on the NRA website, and it's available for download, the Terms of Reference Environmental Impact Assessment for the East-West Arterial. This is, I guess, as Ms. Gina just said, a working document. This is version 1.1, draft terms of reference, it says, dated January the 30th of 2023. Now it's 102 pages, so good bedtime reading. So let me suggest that all of you take the opportunity to locate the document and to actually have a look at it, because once again, people are trying to form opinions based on information that may or may not be accurate. So if you're concerned about what are the things that they're actually going to be looking at, this gives you a very, very good idea. We see, my apologies about my voice. We do see that
while you're addressing your voice issue,
yes.
Could I just also make an intervention
sure.
About the composition of the Environmental Assessment Board? So I mentioned that the Environmental Assessment Board is actually carrying out the function of managing the EIA on behalf of that National Conservation Council. So as a council member, I chair the Environmental Assessment Board. The Director of Planning is a statutory member of all environmental assessment boards, but the other members of the Environmental Assessment Board are chosen from those government entities that have regulatory concerns around the project that is being examined in the EIA. So for this project, the team members for the EAB come from the Department of Environment, the Department of Planning, and the Water Authority, as well as Public Works. So we have membership. The Environmental Assessment Board has membership from those entities. And I think it would also be important to say that obviously we're involved throughout the process. So once the TOR has been agreed and WRA and their team basically goes away and starts working on the actual assessment, there will then be, as a product of that assessment, a document that's called an environmental statement that will summarize the findings of the environmental impact assessment. That draft environmental statement will also come back out for public consultation. So there will be another opportunity for the public to examine the results of the EIA. And again, there will be a final version of that document published. The Environmental Assessment Board will publish its own review of the environmental impact assessment, and we will use that information then, as I mentioned right at the beginning, to inform our advice, our recommendations to Cabinet, to the NRA, to whoever is making a decision in this project.
All right. Well, thank you for that additional information. We've just had a few people, I'll just do this on air, Gina, who are asking if you can get a little bit closer to your microphone so that they can hear you just a little bit better.
All right. Sorry, is that any better?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I believe that sounds better. All right. So very good. We do see that the head of the NRA director, Mr. Edward, has also joined us this morning. So good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning to your listeners, Sandy. It's good to be here.
Yes, so that's Mr. Edward Howard, for those of you who may not know. He heads up the National Roads Authority. Now, we were talking a little bit, and I think you have some more specific numbers, Edward, on this, but we were talking about more quality of life issues. Why is this road even necessary? Because I see even in the comment section, there's some people saying, oh, we don't need to build this road. What are we building this road for? Why is this road necessary?
Yeah, so I think you framed it correctly, Sandy. It's basically looking at quality of life. And if you look at the way the island is, so for the folks that live in West Bay and along West Bay Road and so forth, they have the benefit of two roads. So we have West Bay Road and then we have the Esley Tibbetts Highway. And as someone who's lived in both areas of the island, in Bordentown first, and sitting in an hour and a half long traffic jams, and then I moved to West Bay Road, where it now takes me 8 minutes to get to work. So it's been such a huge difference in terms of my quality of life and the time I get to spend with my kids and so forth. So we really would like to see those benefits for all Caymanians, not just for one section of the island. Now, part of why this has happened is essentially the way that we have planned our island, in terms of us having most of our commercial and most of our employment centered in one specific location, and that would be essentially where, so you have Kamana Bay is like sort of one town in itself, and then you have Central Georgia, and so we've essentially, through lack of foresight and stuff, we've essentially created an employment center that forces everyone to drive into one location. That's really the crux of what has happened. Now, in order to solve that, in the short term, you really can only really do that through improving the roads and some other measures which, the Compass and others have put out there. But long term, what we really want to do is to be able to have the development plan, or Plan Cayman, encourage employment out in the Eastern District, so that we can have that sort of balance. So you don't have, 16,000 vehicles or trying to get from East End, North Side into town. You have a balance. You may have, 8 coming in and 8 going. So a good example of that would be, say, people who work at the Department of Agriculture or so forth.
Yes.
We've always asked the question, like, even us, why is NRA in town? Why is Public Works in town? Why do we have to have CUC, for example, in town? So those 3 that I just listed, you're looking at probably 600 or 700 employees between just those 3 entities alone. So what if those types of employment centers were located in the Bordentown, Savannah area, or areas where, then you would have a more appropriate balance of commute in the mornings, and it would not tax the road network as much as it's doing right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Very good. I do see, again, a lot of questions coming in, everything talking about DART and Cayman Bay to, we're going to be, if we build this, we're going to be underwater by 2026 and so on. So, I mean, again, I wish people would listen this morning with a view to trying to educate themselves about exactly what this process will entail. I think Ms. Gina did a very good job of explaining to us what we can expect from the terms of reference and, the composition of all of the people who will be contributing to some of the final outcomes of this. So can we spend a little bit of time maybe looking at this document so that people can truly understand exactly what it is that you will be looking at?
Sure. Well, the document itself, the terms of reference is basically by subject heading. So what we could do, I'll sort of yield to Joyce and see if she wanted to sort of frame what the particular subject matters are, and then we could speak briefly, I guess collectively speak briefly on some of those. So I'll let Joyce sort of just give us an overview of what, obviously hydrology, drainage is one of the main components. And then also, the environmental issues and stuff. So we'll let Joyce just kind of reframe that for us, and then we'll do some general discussions around those points.
Thank you. Yeah, when we were pulling this document together, we were a little surprised as well when it, over 100 pages worth. But when you pull back and look at the overall project, we are looking at both sections 2 and sections 3 of the East-West Arterial in one document. That's almost 10 miles of brand new roadway if this does happen. That's a lot of different variables that we need to look at, different affected resources. We're looking at direct impacts, indirect impacts, cumulative impacts. So that's the reasoning behind why this document is so long. We did look at some of the other EIA terms of reference that were approved in past years, and it was a lot shorter, but those were point sources. It was a building in one particular site. It wasn't 10 miles of roadway. So unfortunately, yes, this is good reading if you want to go to sleep sort of deal.
Yeah. And just to add to that to Sandy, I actually took the time and actually looked at the Highway 2000 in Jamaica when they did their terms of reference and so forth. And theirs is, for certain sections of the road, it's nowhere near as comprehensive as the one that we've put together. And the reason for that is really when you look at it over, as Joyce said, this 10-mile stretch, there's various sections of that road that will have different concerns. Obviously, like if you go from Hearst to Lookout, there's sort of different concerns as opposed to going to Lookout to Frankstown. Some of those were highlighted at the meeting last night. Obviously, like where the Mastic Trail is an area of concern. It's actually an area too that hasn't been studied quite extensively, and there's some certain we're trying to learn more about the characteristics of the Mastic Trail and what sort of contributes to that whole ecosystem. There's areas like Meager Bay Pond that are of grave concern as well, because Meager Bay Pond is also an animal sanctuary. And then there's areas in the Bodden Town area, so just behind Lookout. And so between Lookout and where the road would extend, there's a sort of a natural low-lying, almost like a drainage, could consider a drainage basin. So as Gina quite rightly said, if you were to put a road across there and, you get hurricanes and certain major rain events, what is going to happen? And that's really why we're taking the time to really study this out and try to understand so that we don't make a mistake. In terms, so the design of the road will be so contextually so that it mitigates a lot of these major issues or major concerns. So just to sort of alleviate the fears of a lot of persons, we're not just plowing through and putting 6 lanes of highway through. We're really taking our time to look at how this road can sort of marry with the environment and with the terrain.
Very good. Let me ask for the WRA experts in the house. Have you ever taken on, I know again you've done a lot of projects, have you ever taken on a project such as this with something that would be the equivalent of the central mangrove wetlands being sort of smack dab in the middle of a proposed roadway?
In a former position, I was working in Louisiana for their transportation department. We were looking at a new alignment, roughly 26 miles in length, connecting an interstate to one of the northern towns in Louisiana. And that was a full environmental impact statement, which is pretty analogous to the EIA process. So the same level of reviews, same, I don't want to say impacts, but same affected resources, both terrestrial, aquatic. We had to look at the social economic portion. We had to look at environmental justice. So yes, we're well experienced in this complexity of a project and length of a project.
And also, Sandra, if I can add, I mean, beside WI, there's also two island where we brought them in as they're assisting the NRA indirectly to. The NRA doesn't do EIs, but we brought them in for expertise to guide us and provide some oversight services. And the two individuals that are assisting the NRA from TY Lin is Jeffrey Marcus and Sarah Goodcarns. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. They're both environmentalists, but Jeffrey has about over 30 years of wetland and mangrove restoration projects over the years in the U.S., Florida, and Louisiana. So, well, they're not part of WA's team, but he has that experience, so they're guiding them also. In addition to WA has amazing resources to do these kind of things, but so I think we have the best team to look at that, to address both the direct and indirect impacts and effects of such a project.
And also for additional members on the WRA team, we also have Stantec, Resource Environmental Solutions. Well, Stantec is doing greenhouse gases. RES, or Resource Environmental Solutions, are helping us with the mangroves and mitigation. We do have Tower Marketing here on the island, who's helping us with communication. And then we also have AMR, which is a geo-environmental firm here on the island. They will be helping us with doing like the geotech work, looking at the depth of peat, the geology underneath where we think the road might go. So we do have a really large team helping us.
All right. So we're going to be looking at some of the potential indirect effects of this project. So I'm glad that you mentioned that there are actually several sections to it. So section 2 is from Woodland Drive to Lookout Road. Lookout Road is in Lookout Gardens?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And section 3 then goes from Lookout Road to Frank Sound Road within Bordentown and the North Side districts, northwards to North Sound and south to the coastline. So 10-mile stretch, 16 kilometers, 160 foot wide, 49 meters, multi-lane highway and associated roundabouts is sort of the project study area that you guys are actually going to be looking at. So it's, I guess, relatively massive projects as projects go on this island. Have we undertaken anything quite like this, Edward, in the past from the perspective of NRA?
Sandy, no, this is quite a large undertaking for us. As you know, in the past, when we built roads, we've basically done, say quarter mile to half mile sections at a time. We have in our arsenal, obviously, is we have the overall plan of what we want the road corridors to look like. But as sort of the traditional government borrow and spend sort of thing, we've only been able to make incremental improvements. And one of the things that has, as we always say, is that we're always playing catch up because the population has grown so fast. And you heard people allude to that last night. It's grown much faster than we would have anticipated, as well as the number of vehicles and so forth. Cayman has really seen a sort of a development boom. And then in terms of us being able to keep up with that in terms of road infrastructure, we haven't been able to do that. So this would be, we haven't even gotten into the whole construction part of it and how long it would take. But this in itself, once the environmental aspects are sorted out and all of the other technical aspects that go along with it, it essentially gives the government the green light to go ahead and start to implement this road network.
Yes. And
All
also,
right.
Sandy,
Yes.
if I can add one thing, it says 160 foot wide multi-lane highway.
Yeah.
It's the corridor. We're not talking 160 feet of asphalt. So the cross section will make provision for CUC, so they're not road, but they need some land. There's going to be provision for there'll be possibly bus lane, bicycle, but also for drainage. There's some green space, if you wish. And it's up to 6 lanes. And we're not saying that we're going to build 6 lanes. That's not yet. But if it was ever needed in the future, the right of way would be there. But, it will be one lane in each direction, maybe some section widens to 2 to go back to 1. The right of way will be that.
Yeah. So Sandy, everyone talks about, you hear people talk about public transportation, monorail, light rail. There's a thing called bus rapid transit. Any of these options, if they become viable, in the future, we're talking decades ahead, this corridor is designed in such a way that the space is reserved that if we needed to do that, then that would be possible. You see, so we've even positioned the roundabouts and so forth in such a manner that we can do flyovers if necessary. We can have dedicated bus lanes, because one of the things we talked about is restricting cars. So if the government goes to the point where it says, okay, we're going to restrict cars and only have the car share. Right now, we're probably at 90%, car share. In other words, most people drive. But if we were to implement policies to say, okay, we're going to restrict vehicles so that we're somewhere in the region of, say, 60 or 70%, what the corridor does is allows you to be able to put in dedicated bus lanes or high occupancy vehicle lanes. So your bus lanes could be dedicated just for buses only, or they could be shared. So there's many different ways and that we can reimagine the corridor. To say it succinctly is that we can come up with people talk about having bicycle trails, nature trails. You could actually within this corridor have a cycle path. You could have a dedicated cycle path where that's safe and separated from the main highways, from the main carriageways, that if you choose to cycle from even say from north side, you could, so we don't want to have people believe that we're basically clearing out 160 feet and then putting down 6 or 8 lanes of asphalt. That's absolutely not the case.
And I think it's important. I mean, I'm glad, Mr. Tibbetts, that you brought this point up. And I want to say it again, because one thing I've realized in the interest of sort of educating the public generally, I find that you've got to say something about 100 times before it starts to sink in and people start to accept it as factual. So when you mention that this East-West Arterial corridor is not just about putting down roads, but also more importantly, it's about putting down important infrastructure for the sort of, inland areas, everything from CUC access to, telecoms, internet, whatever. Those things are also important to the quality of life for people, Caymanians who have ownership of land and wish to build their homes and so forth in those areas as well.
Good point, Sandy. So currently we don't have, you hear a lot of people talk about, we don't have a proper development plan, or we don't know where we're going, sort of thing. And as much as that might be true, what we're trying to do is it's planning and land use and road development. They're sort of interrelated, and sometimes it's one leads the other sometimes. So what we're doing is, in terms of infrastructure, if we have a corridor that we can imagine 30, 40 years from now, Caymanians' quality of life, they will want fast internet. They will want electricity that's underground. They will want proper water supply, a central sewer, because we can't just keep drilling deep wells into the ground, septic wells into the ground. Right now, we dispose of all of our sewer. So if you can imagine several thousand more homes being built in Cayman over the next 10, 15 years, and all of the sewer is going into the ground, that's not environmentally, proper. So a central sewer system is something that's been talked about for decades, right? So this road provides the corridor space for that. Proper drainage. Drainage isn't just deep wells, right? So in a lot of places, drainage conveyances horizontally through culverts and different things like that. So all of these things once we have a proper stormwater plan. Another aspect that's not been talked about much is in terms of the national energy policy. One of the things that the national energy policy dictates is being able to implement solar energy, wind energy, these sort of things in the future. So one of the possibilities that the corridor provides is also being able to use roadside wind turbines to generate electricity. We've actually had proposals made to us quite recently on the potential of that. So there's, like I said, we have to reimagine or imagine the corridor in its full context in terms of what it will provide. Let's just say, for example, let's look at national priorities. Let's just say, for example, the airport were to move, or we then get more in sort of medical tourism where we have the health city and all those, and we get a lot of ancillary development around that and so forth. What if we move the cargo port? All these types of things. We will need a roadway system that will be able to facilitate safe and efficient movement of trucks, cargo, all these types of things. So if we wait and if we don't sort of, plan this out now, we will be having to come back later on. Like you're seeing, we're doing a lot of cases now and having to disrupt actual development, have to tear down buildings and, widen out streets and so forth, because we didn't actually have the vision to see what Cayman could look like in the future.
Right. And so that then answers one of the questions that I just saw that came in about why 6 lanes. You're saying it's not just about 6 lanes. It's about anticipating the future use of, whether it's buses, public transport.
And Sandy, that's probably a little bit of our fault that we shouldn't, to show a 6-lane highway. And I mean, just from me thinking generally too, we probably will never need 6 lanes. And I hope it never gets to that, because what that would mean is that we haven't paid any credence to public transport or other modes of transport. It would mean that we have just basically, so if you can imagine needing 6 lanes in the future, that's probably a couple of decades from now. It would mean that Cayman hasn't matured and Cayman has just basically said, okay, we're going to be 100% car centric. We're going to depend on the motor car. And that's not sustainable in any aspect. So what we want to do is be able to shift the balance when it comes to modality and stuff. So we want those that want to be able to ride bicycles, we provide the infrastructure for that. Those we've talked about it on previous shows with you. You see a lot of people using the e-scooters, e-bikes, those types of things. So the corridor gives you the ability to be able to provide safe space for those people to operate within the network, within the highway.
All right, Miss Gina, let's Miss Gina, let's just bring you back into the conversation here. There's a whole section, of course, on the geography, wildlife, and natural areas. Perhaps you're best suited then to speak to us on, what are some of the areas of concern. It says here in the document at page 15 that the mangroves, and again, this is essential wetland mangroves, comprise approximately 30 square miles or 78 kilometers, 36% of Grand Cayman's total landmass. The central mangrove wetland is a fundamental component to the natural ecosystem of the Cayman Islands, and it's home to a variety of animal species and plants, such as the native Indian whistling duck, where 83% of that duck population can be found. So put in context then the importance of the central wetland mangroves for us.
Okay, so hopefully everybody's hearing me a bit better. I'm not sure. I'm trying my best to speak loudly and closely to the mic. So let me know if I'm not coming across, please. But essentially, the Environmental Assessment Board highlighted the ecology of the central mangrove wetland as an important aspect of EIA to be evaluated because obviously the central mangrove wetland not only contributes to the health of the North Sound and the marine environment, but it is also important, as you pointed out, to other species, land-based species. It also very likely plays a major role in the microclimates that allow the biodiversity in the mastic area, the dry forest in the mastic area to occur. So this area is all very sort of interconnected, and it is why we need to understand exactly what impacts will arise if the road is in place along the route that has been gazetted. And we have to identify any possible ways to actually mitigate the impacts. Of course, we also know, in looking at this with a climate change lens, that mangroves are one of the best ecosystems globally in terms of capturing carbon and then storing it in the peat that's produced in mangroves. So that's a big concern for us, is the direct loss of, several tens, if not hundreds of acres of mangroves along the actual road corridor. And we want to understand, how could that loss be mitigated? And I guess this is also a good place for me to talk about the fact that, in addition to the environmental statement being the output of the environmental impact assessment process, the EIA directive also requires an environmental management plan and a monitoring plan, if that's necessary, to be produced by the consultants. And what that will do is it will actually specify the mitigation measures that have been identified by the consultants in order to mitigate the effects that have been assessed and found to be significant. It will also allow us to understand what are the residual impacts, because although we can mitigate, sometimes we can't mitigate the full extent of the impact, and we're left with what's known as residual impacts. And these are the sorts of things that the decision makers will have to wrestle with and weigh up in the decision making process. What is the benefit? What's the cost benefit of putting the road in versus leaving the do nothing option? And that's part of the evaluation that will be done as part of the EIA. We haven't really looked at the alternatives analysis section of the EIA, and I think that might be important too, for people to understand that there will be an assessment of alternatives in order to try to work out what in the round is the optimal solution, taking into account the environmental effects, the socioeconomic effects, as well as the ultimate goal that the road is trying to achieve. So that type of analysis will be conducted in the EIA as well. But in terms of specifically about some of the species of concern, I mean, we know, for example, that the Cayman parrot has typically used the black mangrove habitat that's on the southern fringe of the central mangrove wetland for nesting. A lot of that habitat has gone. Some of it was damaged in Ivan. Our parrots are obligate hole nesters, so they need old trees to where they can create nest holes, and they use those over the years to nest. So having a healthy ecosystem there includes having some of the dead vegetation around to serve that purpose. And we just need to understand the full impact of the road. Obviously, you've identified the effect on the mastic trail. As it stands now, the road corridor bisects the mastic trail, so that the trailhead where people start their tours would be on the south side of the road, and that you would have to basically cross the road. So we need to resolve that issue somehow. That's one of the issues that we already know before we start the assessment. So just essentially looking at all of the impacts on the ecosystems, the ecology north of the road and actually south of the road, because we also need to understand what would happen when the connectivity between, for example, Miga Bay Pond as a protected area and the central mangrove wetland is severed by the road. How can we retain that connectivity? Are there mechanisms? Are there structures? Or is there a design that could be applied to the roadway in that area to allow the free exchange of water, for example, between the Meager Bay Pond wetland system and the Central Mangrove wetland itself. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the sorts of issues that we're concerned about in relation to the Central Mangrove wetland. Of course, there's also the water lenses. There's the Lower Valley water lens, which is immediately south of one of the parts of the road. There's the north side water lens is immediately north of the section of the road that's closest to the Frank Sound Road. Those lenses require recharge by rainwater. The Central Mangrove wetland itself is an important inducer of local rainfall. So, we need to understand whether, for example, the ability of those lenses to recharge would be impacted by this roadway. The Savannah Gully, everybody knows about that. That is actually in the first section of the road. And I think I'll just address this head on because it came up last night. There was some question as to whether there could be 2 EIAs done or no EIA done for the section of the road that goes up to Woodland Drive. Well, one of the main concerns that many people have, including the NRA, is the impact of that Savannah Gully when storm waves overtop the Pedro Savannah cliff there, and that is in that particular portion of the road. So aside from the fact that the Central Mangrove wetland is a complete functional ecological and physical unit, and it makes no sense to assess impacts on portions of that ecological unit. You need to really assess the impact of the entire roadway. And also there's just basic cost savings. Why would you opt to mobilize separate teams at different times to study basically the same issues like the hydrology, for example? It makes a lot more sense to understand the hydrology of the basin as opposed to the hydrology of a little bit of the basin. So I think that in terms of, why does it make sense to do this as one EIA? I just also wanted to address that because I know there was some discussion about it last night, and it was the EAB that insisted that happen. So I just want to make, if anybody has a problem with that or they have questions, I can try to answer those in relation to the EIA. Why one EIA and not 2?
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Lots of comments coming in. Some are just, oh my gosh, I'm really encouraging people to listen with a view to understanding this process and what will be involved. But it seems like, some people have just made up their mind. And of course, they're just throwing all sorts of stuff out there. I see comments about Cayman's going to be the next Dubai, that, we're going to be a sinking island. Can I just, Gina, from your perspective, obviously you guys at the Department of Environment are, experts in your own right. It seems like everybody out there has an opinion. It obviously doesn't mean the opinion is based on any degree of fact. What more can you guys do to educate people? Even when we talk about, sinking islands, which is a thing. Miami, they're predicted in another 50 years, Miami's going to be underwater. The Cayman Islands, which is a flat, low-lying area, might also be facing the exact same fate in 100 years. Is that because of this roadway? What are we talking about here? What do people need to understand when it comes to environmental impacts? Because it's so interesting how all of us, have an opinion on this, but then we when we talk about feral cats, for example, and the chickens, like, oh, no. We don't want to protect the native environment in that instance. In that instance, the native environment must go because we want the cute little kitties that we think are cute to have some sort of rights in this community. There's so many conflicting things I find that people believe. How do you think you guys could do a better job of sort of just generally educating the public? Because there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there. the biggest thing to do with rising sea waters isn't the building of roads. It's actually global warming.
Right.
And yet
So
I see people in the comment section connecting that. It's just, it boggles my mind.
So I was going to say that with or without this road, Cayman will have to address the impacts of climate change, and we're working with the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency now on putting together. We're quite far down the road, putting together an updated climate change policy, which is going to be coming out also for public consultation sometime later this year, sooner rather than later, hopefully. So yeah, the road itself is not the cause of climate change. It can contribute because of the loss of mangroves, the exposure of the peat, and that is an impact that will be assessed and for which mitigation measures will be proposed as part of the EIA. So in terms of what can the DOE do more of, I hope that people would accept that we are as visible as we possibly can be. We actually have to get some work done, but we do try to avail ourselves of all of the opportunities to talk to the public, radio, TV. We go into schools. We're on social media. We hired recently a public education and outreach officer. We, for years, realized we needed such a person, but inevitably, when there was a choice of, do we have somebody who can actually help us do some of the work that we need to do in terms of the research and monitoring, or do we hire somebody to tell other people what we're doing? The choice was always, we need more people to do work. But I think that we realized that, and thankfully we got the funding to hire the public education officer. So I'm open to suggestions as to how we can do more, but I think that if the community is honest, we are one of the departments who are out there more often than most, talking to the public about our plans and what we're trying to do. And inevitably, we face the Google warriors who are Googling information, getting some correct facts and some facts that are completely misunderstood or out of context for our environment, our situation. We try to put people right in terms of where we can provide facts and data. We do. So, Sandy, I'm open to suggestions, but we are really trying to get the word out there on many fronts.
Yes. All right. Thanks very much. Of course, we've been listening to our guests in the studio now for some time. We do want to invite any questions. So 936 Bobo is the telephone number, 936-2626. You can certainly feel free to call in to the program. Feel free to do so. I see some comments. I mean, people seem to make all sorts of, I don't think, again, that people are listening. They're jumping in the comment section with comments. Someone said that that the feral cats are not native. At no point have I ever said that. I've been saying the opposite for the past entire week. If you're not going to pay attention and listen in this classroom, then you should just perhaps refrain from the comments that don't even make any sense and are completely inaccurate. Good morning, Alejandro. Welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning again.
Yes, sir.
I got a bunch of questions for these people because did they ever remember what happened after Hurricane Ivan?
What part of what happened?
Like, are they still on? Are they still on? Are they still on?
Yes. I'm just asking you to clarify.
I have a question. Have they ever remembered what happened to Hurricane Ivan during Hurricane Ivan?
What part? Can you be more specific about what you're referring to? Because there's a lot that happened after Hurricane Ivan.
Cayman Islands has suffered a lot of damages in the past, and it hasn't made Cayman any stronger. That's all I'm trying to say. So if they're continuing with their destruction of the wetlands, it's going to continue getting worse, and Cayman don't have any more borders going on. We are losing corals, for one, in our ocean. I mean, in our sea, our little small sea. But then we're comparing expansive land like in Dubai. Dubai is built in the Gulf. They don't experience hurricanes like how we have in Cayman, and they could be a stronger one in 2024, 23. God forbid. I don't want that we have to suffer something like Ivan again. I can't afford that.
Okay, so your question, let me ask.
Hurricane Ivan, I was a little kid. I was in fourth year. I had no clue what was going on.
All right, let me.
I don't want to know that I am on my own and have to deal with something like this. I'm not saying that we are not in that path already as is, but why we want to try and make it worse because it's in a vulnerable spot. The mangroves, for one, serve a very big purpose other than just keeping animals safe. They have roots that are bound to the ground that literally makes it like stone rock. And if we just keep cutting them down bit by bit, we're just breaking off little pieces of this island slowly but surely, just like how we're doing it in 7 Mile Beach. As an extremist, I like to deal with things like this because people don't really understand. Like you, Miss Sandy, not to insult you, but you understanding professionals. These people are professional at building and destroying things. I don't like to insult people and then downgrade their profit, but it's not easy to just say, yeah, just do it, and then convince the public to believe in you because you are medical physicians and all these type of things, and I must believe that you are telling me the truth, and then there's no proof that saying it's going to help Cayman because all the Cayman is doing is just getting problems. All we're feeling is in more pressure that they're taking away more expandable land. And then we gonna have whistling duck sitting down inside of our yard saying, oh, that's a very beautiful sight, eh? A whistling duck right there, he was laying eggs in the
So
feet.
Alejandro, let me bring you down just a little bit, right? So do you, Alejandro, do you understand that this environmental impact assessment is meant to look at no decisions, no final decisions have been made. This EIA,
because everything is over procrastinating. They're wasting money on over procrastinating on these things. They say
so
that
your position is don't do anything at all. That's what your position is.
You know what they're gonna do? They gotta understand how this importation of cars coming in because we only have 72,000 people roughly that's supposed to own cars, right?
All right. So you say no population growth. No development for anyone who has property in that area, and the solution is to do nothing.
Miss Sandy?
Yes.
How much?
I'm just trying to understand what your position is.
Own vehicles. Roughly, like let's do a study on that first because we're talking about traffic, and apparently everybody's driving, right? Everybody, and then they don't have nobody taking public bus or begging rides.
All right,
and there's
Mr. Edward, let's talk about traffic. All right, Alejandro, we understand your position. Let's speak to Mr. Edward and see what he has for us in terms of any information.
I'd like to listen to more. I just hear like I already heard the whole entire thing. I came at my conclusions, and yeah, we can't just be weak-minded and just say dig up the ground again because that will give them more permission to go and develop more.
Okay.
Dart have already done it. I hate to talk about Dart, but Dart has made Cayman beautiful. I love it. Thank Dart. I've always talked about him saying nothing bad, but some of the things that they're doing to say, let's just sugarcoat it, like put back houses in the pieces of land that they have destroyed, 500 houses. We're gonna put 1 or 2 little houses there so that they can rehouse in there. Do you think I have confidence that those bats are gonna survive in the hurricane?
All right. Let me thank you, Alejandro. All right, Ms. Gina Ebanks Petrie, let's start with you first. Is the solution in your capacity of the Department of Environment, obviously you may not want to answer this, I don't really know, but in your opinion, is the solution to do absolutely nothing?
I'm not going to comment on that, Sandy.
Okay.
I think that it's my role to remain open-minded, to look at the results of the EIA, along with my colleagues and the EAB. As I said, we will be reviewing the environmental statement and the mitigation environmental management plan that comes out as the end product of this process. And we will be producing our own review of the environmental impact statement and and the environmental management plan, and that will be available to the public as well. But I think that to respect the process that we're in is important, and that I'm just not able to speak in terms of my personal opinions and views on the project itself.
Right. Mr. Edward, NRA. Mr. I've been calling you Mr. Tibbetts all morning. My apologies. I actually thought I heard Tibbetts, but of course the keen listener has said to me that it's Mr. Tybo, not Mr. Tibbetts. So let me first apologize for calling you the wrong name all morning.
Close enough. It's Tebow.
Tebow.
There you go. You're French now.
Got it. So, yes, you've been most gracious for not even saying anything about that. But so let's talk about this option of doing nothing at all. What's the impact if we do nothing?
Well, Sandy, let me frame it this way, because I heard the caller's sort of impassioned response, and I agree with him, because I think having been in sort of this, having started in planning myself and been in this now for about 30 years, I think where we're failing as a society, or a Cayman society, is we haven't come together and said, what do we want Cayman to look like? So where's the sort of national development plan, or what is it that Cayman is going to look like? So a lot of the things that you heard me say earlier in terms of quality of life and where we see ourselves and our grandparents' future and our grandkids' future and so forth would be evolved around, do we want Cayman to kind of stay the way it is? Some people may say, you've heard it at the sort of national debate. Some people say 20-story buildings. Some people say we want this. So I kind of take the same position as Gina, is like, it's not for me to say I'm only one voice. But I think collectively, if we can sort of do sort of like what Singapore and others have done, is get together a lot of experts and voices and so forth to say, let's form a committee, let's form some sort of think tank that can inform the government and the people on what is it that Cayman should look like, or what is our focus for the future. And then that would really sort of direct a lot of things in terms of infrastructure. For example, there's no national infrastructure plan. There is a development plan, which, is zoning, land use based map, but then what do we want that to look like in the future? What do we want East End and North Side areas to look like? And there really isn't a consensus on that at this point in time. So all we can do is, from the NRA perspective, is to sort of imagine or say, okay, what, like I said before, what if we need to move the cargo port? Because right now we have cargo and cruise working, sort of sharing the same thing. What if, what if the airport moves? All of these sort of national priorities. Then do we have the road infrastructure for that? And the answer to that is no, we don't. Currently, yeah. So it really is dependent on what Caymanians as a whole can come together and say, this is how we want our island to grow, and this is what we want it to look like.
So basically, that's a national development plan, is what you're saying. And I get the point, because I think what happens is sometimes people they're not thinking about the bigger picture. So they're seeing this in isolation, and they don't see how it will have a trickle down impact and affect a lot of other things. And this is probably more of maybe a political decision of when we can get an up-to-date and forward-thinking national development plan. But at the same time, some of the comments that I'm seeing make me wonder, how do people think that you stop population growth? Right? You stop businesses from, some of these people in the comment section, they themselves are business owners, and they are relying on the fact that their customer base will grow and will continue to grow. How is that going to happen if what I'm hearing is Let's not have any more kids. Let's not import any more foreign labor. Let's just put, a block on every single thing. We have more positions and more jobs in this economy than we have Caymanians. So, these people are saying what? Just stop everything, stop every form of development and keep Cayman exactly where it is right here, right now. I wish to challenge them to show me anywhere in the world where that model has ever been done and where it's ever been done successfully, where the people, are able to live and survive and to have a way of life. Miss Gina, can I ask you a question? One of the things that Alejandro said in his arguments to support not doing anything as it relates to this is he said, look at what happened during Hurricane Ivan. He was a kid at the time, he admitted, but did the central mangroves, wetland mangroves, did that do anything to protect us in terms of Hurricane Ivan? Do we have any data on how useful or not that was when it came to Hurricane Ivan? I mean, it was a Category 5 storm and we're flat. So, we didn't have anything to break the storm up. But did that mangrove, or that piece of land, have any impact on the actual hurricane? Or, in terms of breaking it up, or what did we know?
Yeah. So I think we don't have the data to prove that the mangroves helped to mitigate any of the impacts in terms of storm waves, etc. But we know that that's the way that it functions. We certainly saw evidence of storm surge coming in. The biggest thing I would say is that, had the East-West Arterial road been present during Hurricane Ivan, and had we not taken the time to do this type of assessment, to understand the hydrologic regime in the central mangrove wetland, to understand how it functions in terms of attenuating and managing stormwater runoff, wave overtopping, and rainfall. It's just, I can't imagine what would have happened after Hurricane Ivan, because as we all know, the sea came across the road, swept through Bodden Town, and ended up in the central mangrove wetland and had a free flow back out into North Sound. So in terms of there being a lot of standing water in the communities around Bodden Town, that wasn't such a big problem. In the aftermath of the storm, there was a lot of damage that the sea caused, but people were actually able to move around fairly reasonably. I'm sure there was some localized flooding, but there wouldn't have been the extent, I don't believe, had the road been there and had we not made any kind of attempt to assess the impacts and to mitigate them ahead of time.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that, a good deal of the, ecosystem was in the wetlands was directly impacted. And some of it may not have returned as yet by Hurricane Ivan as well. We had one of our experts in the comment section saying that that's a lie. They've all returned. What do we know specifically from the research that the Department of Environment does? To what extent has that wetland been restored post-Ivan?
Well, when I was saying about the trees that had fallen, I was talking specifically about dead trees that were in the Black Mangrove community on the southern boundary of the Central Mangrove Wetland. A lot of them fell over during Hurricane Ivan, and they were not available. They still are not available for our parrot nesting. So I was talking about making sure we understood the effect now of putting a roadway in very close proximity to that same habitat. So that's what I was talking about, not that the Central Mangrove Wetland in its entirety had been destroyed or drowned. We saw that happen in South Sound, by the way. And that's a good example of what happens when a road dams a mangrove basin. So the water came over. South Sound actually experienced, I think, some of the biggest waves that people were able to record during Hurricane Ivan. The water came across the road there, went into the wetland basin, and wasn't able to flow back out after the storm settled quickly enough, because that basin was designed to be in connectivity with the South Sound lagoon there. And when the road was put in, when that coastal road was put in initially, there were sort of there was no connectivity. The NRA have since put drains that take water out of areas like I've forgotten the name of the development now, the very low-lying one that is off the Olympic Highway. Thank you, Randike Gardens. Randike Gardens and other areas like that have been drained. They are allowed to drain through a culvert that the NRA put across the road or under the road. That's less than ideal in terms of for the ecology of South Sound. That's not the way that the system was evolved to deal with stormwater. It can accept a lot of water, and then basically it would release that water gradually back into the South Sound environment. But with the road there, that wasn't able to happen. So it happened there. It happened in 1988 after Hurricane Gilbert and Little came in, and the Tarpon Lake mangrove system on Little came in. So we have local evidence of roads causing serious impacts on mangrove communities. And it is one of the reasons that we were so adamant that the hydrology of this area had to be really well understood, and that the design of the road had to take into account the knowledge that would be gained by studying the hydrology of the area in order to put in place either design features that could mitigate the damage effect of the road, or the alignment would be tweaked in some way. There are various options. The consultants are much better placed to talk about that than I am, but there are options to mitigate the presence of that road at the southern boundary of the Central Mangrove Wetland. And that is, I say again, we have local examples of what happens when you dam to systems, to mangrove systems, when you dam the connection between the nearshore marine environment and the mangrove basin itself.
Mr. Edward, a question for you in terms of, we see a lot of comments here about the bottlenecking that will occur. So people are saying, okay, you might solve an issue up to a certain point, but then how are you going to address the bottlenecking of traffic that's going to happen as we come a bit further down by Hurley's? So my understanding is this isn't a proposal for this will be the only solution ever that the NRA will have planned. Tell us from a planning perspective then, forward thinking, what else is on the map for road developments and infrastructure as it relates to the National Roads Authority?
Okay, well, what we've been doing over the years, Sandy, is we've been trying to alleviate pinch points. And the strategy that we have taken, obviously, has been to work from the Georgetown area out. And so we've started quite a number of years ago with improving some of the roundabouts. So we did the roundabout Chrissy Tomlinson by Lantern Point. We did Red Bay roundabout and so forth. So you started to see us implement 3-lane roundabouts, and then we use the delineators to sort of cordon it off, because those 3 lanes weren't going to be in use at the time. So we did the intersections, and then then started to improve the links between those intersections. And that was because it was to try to at least alleviate the congestion in and out of the Georgetown area. But then we employed in 2016, I think it was, 2016, 2017, then we invested heavily in getting a demand model, a traffic model, and we have one of the experts in the room with us as well, who was very instrumental in helping us with that. So that actually is a very, very useful tool in terms of having to be able to look at traffic, both from a macro level and also from a micro level. So meaning that we can look at the network as a whole and look at the overall delay and different things like that, or we can look very directly at specific intersections. So it's all sort of pieces of a puzzle that's slowly coming together. Some people are starting to see it now. So, like for example, if you see the work that we're doing at the Linford Pearson Highway now, and if you drive and then you see how wide Linford Pearson median is, so from about Agnes down to Kings, you'll see that that road has 4 lanes, but it has a very wide median. That median is going to be reduced in the future to give us our 3rd lanes. So we will have a 6-lane highway from Bobby Thompson Way all the way to Tomlinson Roundabout, Chrissy Tomlinson Roundabout. And that will sort of complete our network in that area. Now, again, we talked about future. So while you have 6 lanes there, like we said, if we start then to restrict vehicles and do sort of things that are, outside of the remit of NRA, the actual 6 lanes can become 4 lanes and 2 bus lanes, so you can start to reimagine or reconfigure the corridor. So what you'll find is in that Red Bay, Grand Harbor area and throughout, you will actually start to see the roads change, or morph is a good word that was just said to me. So you'll actually, and that's not uncommon. That happens all over the world, where in a lot of countries, I know Boston, LA, different places like that are doing that, where they're actually going back in and sort of or morphing their corridors or reconfiguring their corridors, because they have then decided to place more emphasis on public transport. And it becomes very easy to basically take dedicated traffic lanes and turn them into bus lanes. So you don't have to, you're not building new lanes, you're just taking the ones that you have, you're repurposing the lanes. So there is sort of a method to the madness, and this in visioning. Like I said, where are we going? Are we going to stay car centric? If we stay car centric, then we will need 4-lane highways and all this sort of stuff. But if we decide to get Cayman to a point where it's more balanced, then we do have the infrastructure in place for that.
Okay, very good. We do have a commenter on WhatsApp who has shared the following. They said the East-West Arterial regarding Hurricane Ivan will ensure that there'll be access to the Eastern District should a hurricane such as Ivan return. Remember that most of the road from Georgetown eastward was 3 feet deep in sand and rocks from the sea. So that's quite an interesting point. And I do remember that actually, because I took a drive out all the way into East End, and basically the only roadway that we had was severely impacted by Hurricane Ivan, and there was no other option available. Caller, good morning. Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Edward, you were gonna say something.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Sandy, I lived in Bordentown at the time. My house is just past Mans Road in Bordentown, and so I experienced Ivan, and that caller is absolutely the respondent is absolutely correct. There was between 3 and 4. In fact, we had beach sand, up to almost to the eaves of our house. It was the road was impassable between Mans Road or the Guardhouse Hill all the way up to the cemetery, the police station. You literally could not pass through there. There was so much sand and debris on there. And it was fortunate. It was just pure, fortunate that we had the Anton Borden Road at the time. We had that road that goes, and we had actually implemented that road just 2 years before Ivan. So that was the only means of getting past Bordentown. You had to go behind that road, behind the town primary school to get to the east. You could not pass through Bordentown. And then we had other areas in Peace Bay that were inundated. In fact, we do have documented evidence of it, because I was one of the first people on the ground out taking assessment of the roadways. We had to do that for ECLAC, to do a hurricane damage assessment. We also had the roads impassable as you enter East End. In fact, that entire area at the entrance to East End proper was cut off. That's why then the government had to immediately after that then invest several $1 million to build a seawall for the for East End. The cemetery was impacted. There was a dive lodge that was essentially was washed away. And then further on from there, Collier's Beach was also impacted. And so Gina will remember that. We had sand washed up and sand then was deposited into Collier's Pond. So that was just Ivan, right? So we've always talked about it here. You know, we've never seen or experienced an Ivan-like conditions on a sort of a different trajectory. What if the storm passes sort of on the other side of us, where it would impact things like our hotels, our ports, and our fuel facilities? Those are unfortunately all on one side of the island. And what if we get a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane that passes in that direction? The impacts would be totally different. And as a part of this exercise, we're actually having a firm by the name of Beard, who are actually experts in that, and they're actually looking at that. They're trying to model the coastal risk of a hurricane, a sort of a Ivan type hurricane passing on the other side of the island. Yeah, and then they're also looking at sea level changes and so forth. So as a part of this report, this EIA, you will be able to see from the experts what are some of the other considerations. I know in Dominica, we attended a conference not too long ago in Dominica. They're putting in seawalls in certain places because they have a similar situation to our Savannah Gully situation, where they have a break in the iron shore, under certain conditions, the wave run up or seawater intrudes into their inland and destroys their crops. So those are the types of things that we'll be looking at as a part of this study as well.
Okay, very good. Caller, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. I believe that it's necessary to have more roads going to the eastern side of the island, because you can't have the largest part of the island only having one road. Just a simple fender bender brings everything to a screeching halt. That's an unreasonable situation. When I look at where the road is proposed to go, is that the best possible location for the road? And are there any major concerns about the current proposed location that would warrant in any one of the panelists' view modifications to the existing proposal?
I think maybe conclusions haven't yet been drawn with those things. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's correct. But let me add to, because Denny makes a good point. Let me add to that. When we were looking at this, we never, and one of the first things we said was like, there's absolutely no way that this road can go any further north than where we're showing it now. That was an absolute. So then we looked at potentially how far south could we go? And so there were areas where we looked where we would impact Northwood Prison, where we would start to impact sort of the natural basin that exists between Northwood and the Lookout area. So we could locate a road further south, but the impacts that it would have would be very detrimental, because we would essentially be buying homes. There would be a lot of disruption because there are things that are in the way. There are developments that are in its path, and that's a consequence again of not, when you don't have these things planned out well in advance, decades in advance, people are going to develop their land, and planning is going to approve it. So, but if you have these things cited or shown, like we had in the Master Ground Transportation Plan, where a person, so it's a sort of buyer beware. The people already know where the roads are being planned, so therefore but if you don't show them, we only gazetted this road in 2005, so as a consequence, we had to put it as at least to site the road in the best location where we would create minimal impact on homes and quarries and so forth like that. Because one other thing we could do, to go further south, then we're going through 3 or 4 quarries, actual active quarries at the moment. I do want to speak briefly to one report that's out there now. It's called the Ardent Report, or it's done by a consultancy firm. And what the report does in a nutshell is seeks to give alternative solutions to the East-West Highway. And I've read it through a couple of times now, and I'll give you an example of a solution that they've come up with. This is the Ardent Report. They're essentially saying that we don't need the East-West Arterial. What we can do is to basically go through the Boddentown Road area. So, First Capital, so places like Maustins and Lerners and all that stuff. We would essentially widen that road out. So basically disrupt all of those businesses, widen all those things, move all those utilities. And then they have the road going down through Mance Road. So anyone who knows where Mance Road is, that's one of the most vulnerable areas of the island. It's also sort of a scenic coastline area. So with the Ardent solution would mean that you actually go through and widen all of that, and you make that coastal road your new highway, and it would go around, connect to Beach Bay Road, and then connect to Pedro Castle Road going through the quarry. So it's sited right through the middle of the quarry, and then onto Pedro Castle Road, and would terminate by Tall Tree in Newlands. So that's the solution that's being put forward by this consulting group from the UK. And if you want to talk about impacts, then just think about what that would mean to create, for the government to be able to create that roadway.
Anything else for the caller?
Yeah, because actually, I think widening the existing road to be the main highway, I see that as problematic. And I see it as a lack of understanding what the threats are to us here. Because I very clearly understand that the proximity to the water is an issue. And we should be moving our primary transportation networks away from the water, not keep it close to the water, because that is in a major hurricane time, that is not a good idea at all. So, I mean, I know that some people are going to be upset that other roads are necessary, but one more question. When we think about the knowledge that the public needs to have in order to understand what is being contemplated about the entire transportation network, does that map on the wall reflect all of the possibilities, or is some data missing? Like, do we see all of the proposals?
No, what that does, so then that gives you the higher order arterials. So the way we do roads is we do them by hierarchy. So you'll have similar to like in the UK where they have motorways and then so forth. So our highest one is what we call our primary arterial. So that's the East-West and the Esley-Tippets Highway are our primary arterials, and then you have a secondary arterial. So the primary arterials are the roads by which, the means by which you get safe and efficient access to local communities. So we know that someone posed the question last night. They were saying, well, there are all these subdivisions that are still not fully developed. There's still lots of vacant land within these individual subdivisions, and that's true. But what we're saying is in the future, those areas will become, we've seen it like, for example, in the Grand Harbor area where Grand Harbor just kind of stayed stagnant for a little while. And now you're seeing Grand Harbor all of a sudden is just booming. We're seeing a lot of development in the Savannah area. So Savannah Greens, Frank Hall came in and did a lot of development. If we didn't have a primary arterial, essentially the East-West in its current form, all of those subdivisions, all of those neighborhoods would have to, their only means of access would be Shamrock Road and Bordentown Road. And you can imagine the chaos that would be, right, in terms of them even trying to get out of their subdivisions. Because what happens is you have them trying to get out, and then you have all the folks coming from North Side and East End trying to just get through. Yeah. So what happens to them is, in order for them to be able to get to work on time, or to be able, they have to leave early enough to avoid or try to beat those folks that are coming out of these subdivisions in Savannah, Bordentown, Northwood, Newlands. And that's all because we have, when you really look at it in its full context, we have one lane, one travel lane, all the way from East End, North Side, all the way up to Savannah, one lane. And as you said, all it takes is one minor incident, one thing, and the whole thing just shuts down. You know, one proposal
my question is, Mike, sorry, my question is about, you call it a primary road. So what you see on the map there, that's all of the proposed primary roads that would be
that's primary stuff.
envisioned.
Yeah. So then what you do then is within communities, you will have sort of local streets you'll have collector roads and then local streets. So road would be, for example, Marina Drive, Hearst Road, roads like that, the collector roads are designed to take the traffic from the primary arterials and then disseminate into the communities. So we have a number of collector roads. The problem we have with our collector streets is, another thing too, is there's no interconnectivity. So one of the things is, if we want to promote public transport or delivery of goods and services, busing, school busing, all that stuff, the network would be more efficient if these roads were connected. So if you're doing a public bus, for example, and you're going through the Prospect area, it should be such a way that the bus can then leave the primary arterial and go into the collector roads and be able to do some sort of circuitous route to come back. Currently, we don't have that. So currently we have where a bus will stop on the main arterial, and then even if they were to provide service into, say, Hearst Road, that bus would have to drive a mile into Hearst Road and then come back and traverse the same route, because there's no interconnectivity. But if you had that interconnectivity, that bus could then go in and do like a circle route and then go around and continue on. So it's, all these things are necessary to make public transport efficient. If that's the way we need to go, but we need to actually then enhance the road network to be able to properly facilitate public transport.
Right. Yeah, because when I was looking at it, that's what the thought I was thinking. I said, well, if everyone's going to have to get back on this main road, we're not going to really be that much farther ahead.
Right.
And this idea of gated communities is part of the problem. I'm not suggesting that there, like some small areas can't be possible, but there has to be a way in order for traffic to flow from one community to the other, because if someone, let's just say someone works from home, or even near to their home, instead of having to get on the East-West Arterial, they might just be able to take one of the secondary roads to take their kids to school or to go and do something instead of having to everyone getting on the same road is the problem. And
That's correct.
And that's why I was asking, because I was trying to imagine that if I think about what I see on the map, how do I think that would work in the long term? And I remember the planning department talking about the issue of gated communities a long time ago, and clearly it's still an issue, and hopefully that can be addressed and that people could understand that we need to be able to connect the communities by these secondary roads, because we're not going to really be able to build super highways, very many of them, because as you can see, it's not much land. I don't. I mean, I hope that, like what Sandra was saying, that people would seriously really think about this issue in the and try to understand these issues, because we're not going to be able to just live with the road that we have now. And the idea of us saying that the population is not going to grow is unrealistic. Okay, it's just simply not going to happen. As a matter of fact, if Cayman was to make mistakes that cause us to decrease our GDP, etc., the probability is that the population might get even bigger, because people will have more time to make children than to work and so forth. And so it's going to grow.
Yeah.
The question is how.
And then those same people, let me just interject this. Those same people that say that we currently live in a third world country will have a real understanding of what living in a third world country is like.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't, one of the things that when I hear about public transportation, what I hear is public transportation for us, but not for some. And I wonder if the premier is going to take the bus to work. I wonder if all the high-ranking civil servants are going to take the bus to work, because I don't like the idea of segregating society in a way like that, because that will that's going to have a major impact when you start talking about how do you deal with transportation. And Edward, I know you mentioned earlier about 20 and 30-story buildings, right? And the reason I have to bring this up is that the current layout of the Cayman Islands, and I'm not promoting 20 and 30-story buildings at all. So I'm just saying that when you have a single family home, in which many of the developments are, busing becomes more of a challenge. And so people then have to either walk or take some other means of getting to a centralized distribution center to which they can board a bus and go to a place. And so there's a number of issues that we have to face. And I believe that if you were to do a good job of interconnecting communities and having alternate routes at which people could take to get to reasonably close areas to where they live, we would significantly reduce the congestion. And someone was said to me recently that they just discovered that the road that now comes out of Burger King off of Walker's Road to go to the John Gray, they didn't actually know that road was there. And it's the effort to connect the Linford Pearson Highway to that road, I think will take a lot of strain off of the Smith Road area. But it leaves us in a position where we still have to deal with how do we fly over or around or the Hurley's situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, practically speaking, that the economy in the Cayman Islands is going to suddenly switch to where people can be dispersed throughout the Cayman Islands more sparsely. So unless you know something I don't know, I think we're going to have to solve that bottleneck situation there. And in my view, I listened to you the last time you were on the radio, and I believe that if you take the cars over that roundabout, as opposed to having pedestrians walk over that roundabout, I think cars might find it easier to fly over, and people might find it more conducive to just simply walk on ground level to go from Southdown to Hurley's, so that we could keep the flow going. And the other thing is that even if you were to think about reducing the number of lanes for private cars and have them dedicated for buses, we still have the problem of everyone needing to go at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going to happen at some point along the road, if we don't think it carefully, is that people are going to get off the buses and they're going to press a button and they're going to be expecting to walk across the road, and all the traffic will have to wait. And I hope that we don't overlook that possibility for congestion. And we really, really, really need to fix the existing crosswalks where people press the button and expect to walk across the road immediately. Somebody's going to get killed. It's serious. I've had close calls recently myself, where people, they see you. You're only 25 feet away from the crosswalk. You're doing 25 miles an hour. And they press the button and they just walk. Because they think when the light's flashing, they have a right of way. Yeah. And they do have a right of way, but they can still get killed.
Right. All right, Denny, leave us there. So it looks like we need to have some general education on how to use these crosswalks and stuff as well. So I guess you can add that to your list there, Mr. Howard. Lots of things going on. So as we start to wrap up this morning, I don't know if our experts from WRA can answer this question or not. But my final question really for the day is there a way? I mean, again, you've not done your EIA as yet, but just sort of what you know about wetlands, and you talked about Louisiana and having the experience of doing projects previously, over 100 years of experience. You've got the environmental background and experience as well. Is there a way to build this at all without having, I've just had one young man who's very anti doing anything in that area. Is there any way at all to build this without having a quote unquote significant impact on the central wetlands area there?
Given the constraints of the resources that are in the corridor, we acknowledge there are going to be impacts, and it is a 3-step process. First one, we're going to do our best to avoid whatever resources are out there. Once we have done that, then our next step is to go ahead and minimize to the extent possible the impacts that we'll be causing. For residual impacts, as Gina was talking about, then we have to figure out how are we going to mitigate for that. So can we build this road without any impacts whatsoever? No.
But can it be built without significant impact?
That is our goal, and we're actually looking at all the various alternatives to go ahead and assess them, put them in a matrix table,
and I do want to come back and say that, the EIA process is going to inform everyone's decisions, but it is not going to give you an answer. So we will, at the very end, we will have the environmental statement. We'll have all the technical studies that support the statement. And then we're also going to have a matrix table that lays out all the various alternatives that we've decided were reasonable for this area and the costs that were associated with it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Mr. Edward, any final comments before we wrap up today?
No, I think we've covered a lot of topics. I just wanted to kind of do housekeeping and just remind everyone, we can have all of your listeners be reminded that we do have another public consultation tomorrow at, perfect, yeah. At the, I was trying to remember which church it was, the Cayman Islands Baptist Church. Yeah.
Right.
I usually get that mixed up with First Baptist. That's the one on Pedro Castle Road in Savannah. And it's going to be from 6 to 9. Yeah, so we're inviting people to come and give their comments and, see what, we have lots of maps laid out, see what we're planning. And then it's really for people to tell us their concerns so that we can feed that into the terms of reference. So that, when we do the EIA, that we're making sure that we covered all of our bases.
Okay. And let's also remind people that you can get a printed copy of the document that we've been referring to this morning at the NRA office, which is right there at 370 North Sound Road.
Correction.
Public libraries. Oh, sorry.
Sandra, a correction. We're not providing printed copies. It's available on the website. You can view it here, but we can't print 100 copies so it's available for people to download. They can print it themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Gotcha.
I think it's also on the Sustainable Cayman website as well.
Cayman,
Yes.
But it's available.
Is it on DOE?
Yeah, DOE.
Yeah, and it's also on DOE's.
National Conservation Council also has it. It can be downloaded. They can view it. They can print it. It's available to view here, but it's not. Don't place
You're not able to pick up a copy. Okay. And
correct.
My apologies. You can also view it at public libraries.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And post office.
Right. Okay. One right here in Savannah at the Savannah Post Office. And then you can send your comments on the draft terms of reference. You can attend the public meetings. Again, the other public meeting is going to be tomorrow evening at the Cayman Islands Baptist Church there on Pedro Castle Road in Savannah. You also can send electronically via email at doe@gov.ky. You can use snail mail if you think that's somehow better to the Department of Environment, PO Box 10202, KY1 1002. You can hand deliver your thoughts on the terms of reference to the Department of Environment at their environmental center location off of North Sound Road, which is very close there to CUC. So folks, the public consultation on the draft terms of reference is for a period of 21 days and will be closing on February the 20th. Ms. Gina, any final comments before we let you go this morning?
No, Sandy, just thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the discussion, to provide some input on the process that we're following for the environmental impact assessment for the East-West Arterial. And to say that we encourage everybody to take a look at the terms of reference. If you have any questions, if you feel that it doesn't properly address or it doesn't fully capture your concerns, then please do provide the comments to us, specifying, what particular area you're concerned about. And together with the consultants, the Environmental Assessment Board will look at all of the public consultation input and make appropriate changes to the terms of reference to reflect that input. If you don't provide the input, we don't know what you're thinking. So this is for you to get involved and engage in the process. As I mentioned, there will be a second opportunity to comment on the environmental statement, which is the sort of summary of the results of the environmental impact assessment. But you only get there with the answers if you can can sort of put the questions ahead of those. And this is where we have to ensure that we have everybody's questions addressed in the terms of reference.
All right, folks, it's a multi-step process. Please be reminded that the terms of reference will address the following resources and key areas. We've got socioeconomic considerations, hydrology and drainage, including climate resiliency, geoeconomical, terrestrial ecology, cultural and national heritage trust protected areas, greenhouse gas emissions, and noise and vibration. And I challenge every single person who has an opinion on this, or maybe some of you have not yet formed your opinion, to please get access to this document, read it, sit down, discuss it within your household, discuss it with friends and colleagues, discuss it in churches, whatever it takes. They have spent a considerable amount of time putting this document together, and it is chock full of a lot of information. So it's easy to have an opinion. It's much more complicated to have an informed opinion based on actually sitting down with documentation and actually doing some reading. So again, we want to thank the folks over at the National Roads Authority, the experts who were part of that team this morning from WRA. You can again go to the public meeting tomorrow evening and see them. We'll live stream the public meeting, of course. And of course, Ms. Gina Ebanks-Petrie from the Department of Environment. She's the director over there. Definitely have her hands full these days. So we appreciate her coming on the program today as well. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
So folks, they took time out of their busy schedules to come on the program and to be here this morning, practically for the entire show, over 2 hours of dialogue. Again, you've got an opinion. Now, I'd like to encourage you to go away and read this document and see if that impacts your opinion one way or the other. It has a lot of information, and I think that really and truly, there has been no stone unturned when it comes to what they will be looking at. This is going to be a comprehensive analysis of the impact of this project. So by all means, you want to be on here commenting, that's fine, but go away and look at the work that has been put into this 102-page document. And there will be much more to come. This is just one of the initial things that they're doing in terms of the terms of reference for the environmental impact study. So we've had a lot of comments coming in. Some of you were monopolizing the comment section this morning, which it's unfortunate that we have to put you in timeout because you don't realize how much you're even commenting. People see your opinion. You share your opinion. You make your phone call. People see it. You don't have to keep going on and on and on and on and take over the comment section. We encourage you to be mindful that just because you repeat something 100 times doesn't mean that people are going to accept it even more. Although the research actually says quite the opposite, that when misinformation is continually repeated, people actually do accept it as truth. What a hot mess we're in. Anyway, we are hopeful that tomorrow morning, the Premier has confirmed that he'll be on the show for his return to the platform here for another episode of Premier Access. I think primarily we're going to focus on the feral situation, the National Conservation Law, and the subsequent regulations, because that seems to be all that anybody can talk about these days. So let's go ahead and put that on the table for him, get his take on it, and try to understand exactly what is happening in relation to that. We've got news coming up here for you shortly as well. Alejandro says, but they are doing the same. What gives them more? I don't understand what that's about. So, folks, he's talking about PETA. Oh my gosh, y'all cannot be. Listen, go and have a look. I'm actually going to send you a link here as well for the expert that was on this morning, so you can see some of the projects that they have done in other areas under their environmental section, because I think knowing a bit about who is going to be doing this will be useful for you as well, and what experience it is that they're actually bringing to the table. So there's been something that has been developing behind the scenes. I think one of the local Instagram pages put it up yesterday. We had received it. Obviously, they sent it to everyone. They sent it to us. They sent it to K-Man 345. They sent it to K-Man Waste and other people. I think K-Man Waste is the only people that have put it up thus far. It doesn't mean that we're not going to address it. This is in relation to the Miss K-Man situation. You know, I think that what needs to happen here is maybe at this stage, we are going to wait until the outcome, because I believe it might even be this week. And I suspect that that's why the timing of this is of no coincidence. And that's why now it is coming to the fore. To say that these emails are attacking the Minister of Tourism and Transport would be an understatement. They are a direct attack on him and his ministry. And they've essentially blamed them for the entire debacle with Tiffany Conley, saying that they are the ones who instructed the committee early on to keep her on board. And they've made some really serious allegations against the minister as well. So, of course, we will give him an opportunity to respond to those allegations. Today, I will forward him all the messages so he can see them for himself and he can choose to respond or not respond accordingly. So they're very, very damning in nature. And given the seriousness of it, it's not something that we're going to just throw up and post up. We need to give him an opportunity to review and see what this person who has created an anonymous account is saying. And you guys know how I feel about anonymity when it comes to saying things. I stand here every day and I make scathing remarks and put my neck on the chopping block. And, you know, I have been the subject of numerous lawsuits, and I am pleased to say that I remain unscathed in terms of these civil lawsuits for sure. And even the one criminal lawsuit, that is going to be appealed because my record is extremely important to me. But it is important that when you say something, you can actually stand behind it as well. And so I always take it with interest when someone hides their identity in order to share information, because I don't know who this person is. And ultimately, I don't know what their motives may or may not be. I suspect, based on what is said, that this person's actually a committee member or someone very, very close to the committee member who is seeking to remove any and all responsibility from the committee, saying that they were just following orders from the ministry. I have a problem with that because I firsthand have, when I brought this to the committee's attention, I recall very, very, vividly what their response was. And that response is not in keeping with what, this email is now saying. So I'm a little bit confused because I know what happened. I know my part in it. And I know exactly, what was said. And I know what people said to me, committee members, committee chair. And so now that this narrative is being rewritten, I don't know what was going on in the ministry. I have no knowledge of that. But what I do know is that after bits of it that said, the committee member went to court and they were told, my apologies, they were told that they couldn't get any information on this and whatever. I know that that's a bunch of bollocks. That's a bunch of BS, to put it quite frankly. So in my opinion, if part of your correspondence to me is untrue because I have firsthand knowledge that that simply isn't true, then it does make me question the veracity of the entire thing. And like I said before, I do not take lightly to people who can hide behind things and make comments, just like CNS. I think CNS and their platform of allowing people to anonymously make comments is a joke, because it could be 5 people that are making the 100 comments, pretending to be other people. It could be 10 people. We don't have any way of knowing, but those people are permitted to make slanderous comments. They, call people's character into question all the time. They say whatever they want because of how the platform is laid out. It's okay. They feel like they can't be sued or whatever, and they're cowards and they're hiding behind this type of thing. It's how that platform is. Our platform is very, very different. Even when you comment on our website, we specifically chose that it has to be linked to a Facebook account for a reason. Not to say that people can't make up Facebook they can't make up fake Facebook accounts, but you better believe your Facebook account has a geo tracker built into it. Facebook knows exactly where you're commenting from, what IP address, if you're commenting from a phone app, from a PC, whatever. And if it comes down to it and somebody needs to find out who made that comment, it can be done. Don't kid yourselves. The telecom industry has the technology. Facebook and the police have the technology to do that. And that's really about accountability at all levels and to keep us all safe in the environments in which we have to operate when it comes to social media platforms and so on. Yes, you're entitled to your opinion, but there's some degree of, responsibility that comes with that. So someone just sent me a GIF that says BS detector. And it's like the little thing is moving. This is so funny. It says some BS, usual BS, major BS, BS meltdown. And this is what they think of anonymity. It falls into the BS meltdown category. When, again, you have that freedom to do whatever, and you feel like because you're anonymous, you can do so. What a hot mess. All right, folks. So I do want tomorrow is the 9th, and I do see some things coming in. So as it relates to the situation with the minister and the what's it called? The Miscommand Committee. I think at this point, listen, we're so close to just hearing the verdict. Let us just sit back and wait and hear what the verdict says. And then at that point, we will see what the minister does. Some people believe that he isn't going to do anything. In these comments, they claim that he has someone in his political committee that he is actually going to, that they're actually going to be, that he wants to replace the current committee chair with. They even suggested that I should be interested in becoming a committee member. And I know right then that they must have lost all their good senses because, hats off to the committee members because it's an unpaid position. I want to make that clear. I think the ministry representative might be paid for their time, but the actual volunteers otherwise are unpaid. So they do this, for whatever reason, but it's certainly not a paycheck at the end of the day. So what I would actually say is that I want to make it painstakingly clear, in case you missed that memo, that I have no interest, not just in the Miscommand Committee. That's not what this is all about. When you hear me holding people accountable, it's not because I have my eyes on anybody's job or anybody's position. I don't want it in no way, shape, or form. You couldn't pay me. This is what I think of that pageant right now, right here. I'm going to tell you the God's truth, right? You could not pay me $10,000 a month to go and be on that committee. Seriously, if you came to me with a checkbook and said, Sandy, we would pay you 10 grand a month to join the committee, I would say you're out of your goddamn mind. Put your checkbook away and go do something else with your time. Y'all understand what I'm saying? That is what I think of the Miss Universe committee situation. I want no part of it whatsoever. The good volunteers that remain there, hats off to y'all, honey child. That's all I can tell you, but I don't have any interest in it. And I don't have any interest in sitting on any government board or any committees, generally speaking, because of what I do here. I couldn't imagine any position where there would not be a conflict of interest at some point in time. Yeah, because we talk about so many different subject areas and so many different things that at some point somebody might be on the discussion board. And I don't want to be, she's a chairperson or she's a director in that board, so therefore, she's not going to be able to address these really important topical issues that are important to the community. So, I'm sorry, I'm just not, I'm not up for any of that. So don't even suggest it. It is not enticing to me in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to double check the list. Let me just say that there is a bulletin. So let me go ahead and read this for you. That the Department of Vehicle and Driver's Licensing, DVL, is informing the public that all of their offices will be closed on Thursday, that's tomorrow, February the 9th, to facilitate a staff meeting and training workshop and then they will resume business as usual on Friday, February the 10th. So we'll put that up on social media as well, just to ensure that you guys have received all of the notices. So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in to the program. Big shout out to Kevin Watler. He's home for a couple of days this week. He attended the Heart Fund Foundation. They had a breakfast this morning, and you guys know that he is a survivor of a very serious heart, what do I call it? Deformity, heart virus. I don't know what the technical layman term is, but anyway, he is a survivor, and heart health is really, really important to him. And so he's a member of their board, and he supports them as much as he can. So he did travel from Tampa to attend the event this morning, which he was emceeing. So big shout out to Kevin. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the community service that you do and the role that you play. And now here's your news headlines brought to you from Kevin Watler.
Hello, I'm Kevin Watler, and this is your CMR Daily Buzz. Here's a summary of some of Cayman's latest headlines. CUC customers should expect changes in their billing rates as both the base rate adjustment deferral and the fuel cost deferral ended in December 2022. Last year, CUC joined the Cayman Islands government to provide relief to customers from October to December. A police officer and a former employee of a local telecommunications company are facing criminal charges after the ex-employee allegedly unlawfully shared customers' personal information with the officer, which was used for personal purposes. The two were charged following an investigation by the Office of the Ombudsman. The Cayman Islands Humane Society said the government should be deeply ashamed for not seeing it fit to criminalize the feeding of cats and chickens, but making it an imprisonable offense. In a letter to Premier Wayne Panton, the Humane Society said the new laws under the National Conservation Regulations 2022 are unnecessary, disproportionate, and represent a drastic regression for animal welfare laws and policies in the Cayman Islands. The Cayman Islands Red Cross recently hosted its annual Volunteer Appreciation Award ceremony. The event recognized and highlighted the outstanding achievements of volunteers in 2022. Now for your CMR weather update. It's brought to you by WG Charters. Sunrise at 6:57. Mostly sunny skies are expected. When the temperature is at 83 degrees Fahrenheit and the humidity at 70% like the forecast calls for, it will feel like it's in the mid to high 80s. Winds east at 15 to 25 miles per hour, and the sun sets at 6:22. At nighttime, the temperature falls to the mid to high 70s. Looking forward, similar weather conditions are expected. If you would like to know more on any of these stories, visit caymanmallroad.com or follow Cayman Mall Road on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. That's it for now on the Daily Buzz. Thank you for joining me. Please stay safe, and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels. And visit caymanmarlroad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.